Right, this is going to be an episode of Snake and Banter, a totally inauthentic, scripted show where I'm about to say that KingT is looking for work and all that, but now it just sounds fake because now he told me to do it 1 second forward. Like, I was already going to do it anyway, so don't fucking tell me what to do. It's my show anyway. No, anyway, the point is KingT is...
Snake and Banter, the snake.
It is, Snake and Banter, and KingT has obviously been a guest. You might actually even be the guest that's been on the most times, mate. I think you've been on at least 3 or 4 times. So I will just
put... Fourth, yeah.
Yeah, you've done quite a few, which is also why I'll give a little pro tip here for people in the industry. That's why actually being available is also, when people say, turning up's half the battle, it actually is. The amount of people that's really hard to book on shows. So if people are available, then you get the extra spots. And as I referenced with my joke, KingT is actually in a position where I've asked him this in the past, but in the past when I asked you, like, have you ever thought about doing like analysis? Because I said you could obviously do the desk. By the way, anyone who's good on these shows or his YouTube channel could basically be on the desk if you learn the appropriate skills and the timing and all the politics of the industry. But the real problem is what I just said at the end there, the politics of the industry, like, can you get the in? Can you get the person to vouch for you? So I saw that in the past when I asked you, you actually were just sort of like, no, I've never really thought of it actually. I'm just sort of doing my thing and like maybe I would consider, like, I don't know, I think you said something like maybe you do coaching or something, but I think you didn't have any, but you did a tweet recently where you said basically you're open to doing almost anything on camera, like commentator, analyst. What was there more in the list? What else was there?
Honestly, yeah, it was also on the content side, be it giving input or pumping out output, because I've been doing one for a while, and I think I've got enough understanding to do the other side of that also.
Right.
More of like a directing role for that. But yeah, literally, it's a thing in the past where I did all my content on the side, like I had a job, like that wasn't esports related.
Okay.
And so for me, it just wasn't a case of trying it. It was like, if the offer just happens to get thrown my way, I'll take it, try it, see what happens. But otherwise, I wasn't too interested. But now I've decided, I'm going to take that long shot a little more seriously and, put my name out there, put myself forward for those kinds of roles, be actually considered rather than hoping on a miracle, just on an off chance. But yeah, no, I never really took myself seriously as like an analyst for a team. I don't think I've really got those skills, like analyst or coach, but hey.
You'd be surprised.
To chat about it. Yeah, I've heard that too. But also,
he means be a good one, obviously, Maui, not be a fraud. Just
exactly. I'll take the paycheck. Don't get me wrong. Okay. I'm really good at taking the money, keeping my head down. But...
We don't mean be Taz's assistant coach, Maui. You mean like a real job, man. By the way, a bit awkward. Anyway, here's the thing, though. I actually do think, one, that is the obvious other thing I would have said. It's like scout for a team. That's your skill set. But actually, by the way, that skill set would also this is why I asked you, that would quite literally serve you on the desk anyway, because essentially you would just be keyed into, like, the joke is in a tournament like this PGL one right now, I wouldn't know half the teams, mate. You know most of these players and the upcoming people. So I actually think you're already in a position where you can do it. It's just, again, you got to get the gigs, you got to get the people to vouch for you, and then you've got to put in the hours. But by the way, it's not. I actually did think it was good timing to do that post, mate, because as you've noticed, look, I'd make the joke of, like, in the modern day, they need people like you, mate, because otherwise eventually they're going to have to hire me again. So at the moment, they're going through every single pro player that doesn't currently play, or everyone who ever talked to a mic ever, not called Thorin. Yeah. But that list is going to get short eventually. And also, along those lines, they actually have given a bunch of people tries recently. Like, I'll just say this right now at the outset. I actually think the person I'm surprised hasn't got more plaudits is ZywOo. I think he fucking nailed it, mate. Like, he looks awesome right out the gate. Like, he's come in for almost like, I wouldn't say the finished products. He's only done a few lands, but he actually already has, like, his identity, he has his angles. I think he's sort of already found his voice. I was actually quite impressed when he did it. Like, I enjoyed his YouTube content, but you never know how people transferred. So I actually think so first of all, they've given a lot of chances out the last, I'd say, year or so. And I actually think some of the people coming through, this is a real chance to shake up the hierarchy. So I think it's a good angle, mate. Go for it. See what happens. So if anyone watches this show, not just to misrepresent what me and Mauisnake say, which obviously, look, that is essentially part of the viewing process. But aside from that, when you're not doing that, maybe also just reference that KingT's looking for work, put the word out there. Put the word out there.
Yeah, it's appreciated.
Let's start. Like go on. Come on, Maui.
One thing that's a vouch for KingT is that he unlike the very beginning of the show, which was inauthentic, he actually authentically does consume the tier 2 stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's not just like, and all, like, because when you listen to KingT's content, first of all, he usually is actually just putting demos on the screen so he can talk about the micro of what they're doing. The second thing is he's actually just watching it, and I feel like sometimes the most I hear about tier 2 players is their entry stats or their numbers, but like he's actually seen what they do in the server. Like there's a small group of people that are watching tier 2 CS and not betting on it and just like losing their minds. And I think KingT is actually in that small sect of people. Maybe he is betting, but let's not put that out there publicly. Okay.
I've never bet on a tier 2 match. I've bet on tier 1 play, like a lot. Or like if a tier 2 team plays in a tier 1 event, I'll know if there's an upset matchup, I might take a punt on it. But otherwise, I'm one of those few people who watched Duke Visura on 100 ping gods 4 years ago.
Okay.
Like, I'm that guy.
Yeah.
Which is also, by the way, in itself a distinction, which is there's a lot of people know tier 2 people because they do tier 2 online events. They hate those teams. They don't want to be doing that. They're just dreaming the whole time of watching all the LAN teams. So if you actually also can organically enjoy watching tier 2, you also got a massive advantage, mate.
There's an element of masochism about it, let's be real. There's certain teams you like more than others because they play like more polished CS. Some are just an absolute mess. But yeah, look, I do enjoy the grind of it. I do enjoy, I guess, picking apart which teams, which players are actually fun and interesting and worth seeing at the next level. So yeah, that's a part of the fun for me.
Well, anyway, let's start the audition then. So what is your good point?
Yeah, so I've got this is a move where a lot of things have happened recently that are just weird roster moves. There's been some strange risks taken. And I'm actually going to come out and say that I enjoy when a team actually takes that risk, makes the really odd or out of left field sort of transfer to at least shake things up rather than just being incredibly stale and stagnant and potentially just recycling a few names we've heard before but that clearly haven't been performing for a while. I really like that FaZe have chosen this timing especially to go and take a risk on s1mple. You know, Brokey had been on the chopping block for quite a while, and look, it's not a permanent move. It's 2 months, essentially, 2 events. Why not take a risk on a guy who has that upside that we've seen before of being literally a god amongst men? Why not take that chance that he still is, just at least for a couple of events? And then afterwards, you can try and do a proper signing, try and address other roster concerns potentially. It's a nice short-term change. And then for Furia, this was something that was absolutely nuts. I mean, they signed a kid who's never played any, basically, tier 2 CS, and Yakindar, which is an odd move, but I really like both.
The joke is, I actually did consider typing that name into your channel. That's one of the only places I might have been able to find out who the fuck this guy is. I don't watch this play, of course.
He is Prospect Molodoi.
Oh, he's actually done a video. I was being sarcastic. Okay,
I was so tilted. I released it like the day he gets transferred or the day after. But I've been working on it for like a good month or so. I'd been watching the demos with members on the channel for a while. But look, the AWP is a position where raw talent can carry you through. We saw that with Ultimate. We saw that with Regali now on FlyQuest being their best player for this entire year. It's a really interesting move to make considering he's never touched tier 1 and he plays in a way that's very disconnected from team play. He's often very individual, but hits so many highlights off the back of it. And then bring in Yakindar. I'm going to defend this because, look, he may not be consistently able to reach heights at tier 1 anymore, but every time he comes into a team, he brings an injection of something, like ideas. He forces usually a toxic asset to get kicked out. He makes a lot of things change that will prevent a roster like Furia truly stagnating still. Like, he's going to refresh them, bring some energy, bring some liveliness, and potentially cause more changes, even if it does eventually end up with him getting kicked in 6 months. But at least it's something that Furia can do to start that rebuild and become relevant again.
People should remember the fact that Yakindar did improve Liquid when he first joined. I know the revisionist history is that he was bad the entire time that he was there, but he brought fresh ideas to the team, helped them revamp their system. Even though he fell off as an individual towards the last year and a half, he was, first of all, a good player. I don't know if he's actually a good individual player, but he has a European mindset, which clearly hasn't actually been absorbed by Furia, despite the fact they had Lucid and Innershine as assistant coaches. Now they have Krizen. I think it's Krizen as an assistant coach. So they have Eastern European ideas coming in. I know Yakindar's Latvian, but like obviously he was brought up in the school of James. So for him to be able to try to bring Furia, maybe not to modern day CS because Yakindar really hasn't been at the tip top of that lately, but still be able to inject some sort of ideas, that's good. And also, Cello was bad. Just flat out. Cello was actually just bad. So I have no opposition towards Cello being taken off the team, even if it's for a Yakindar who was playing some of his worst CS in his last 6 months with Liquid. I had no idea about Molodoi. I mean, other than literally seeing his numbers being high on 2025's list, like, that's kind of as much as I've gleaned from anything, but it seems like he's already actually doing pretty well from the get-go. And oh yeah, the s1mple angle. I mean, I think this is one of the coolest ways you could possibly use s1mple, where it's a temporary stand-in situation. I know that s1mple. I'm like 90% sure that s1mple's on contract till the end of this year. So it's more. I think he just has 7 months where he's still tied to NAVI, right. And from then he'll be a free agent. But for him to at least get in the server again, it's good because like, okay. I mean, s1mple did not seem like he knew what he was doing with his life for a while. He definitely was just trying to get something together after the war, and it looked like he was kind of just scattershot approach, finding some meaning for what he's going to do next. But getting back into the game, it's tough to get back to the very top of an esport, but at the same time, it's not a physical sport. You can do it with the perseverance and the tenacity. So hopefully he shows that.
Okay. I mean, I will say, to take the broader point, which is the idea that people took roster gambles instead of just like waiting with a roster that's clearly not going to do anything. I actually agree with the overall point. Like, one of the things I actually hate about the modern day in CS is that all the money in the contracts gets in the way of the CS. Because if people don't know, like, there are a million roster moves that would have happened in the last 5 years that didn't. That would have happened in the first 5 years of CSGO. Like, if people remember back in the day, the joke was, even though we didn't have actually the whole leaker culture, almost anyone could have done it because it was obvious. Like, if you were watching the people in Fnatic, for example, right, when it was like Crimson Olaf, and then Fnatic started to taper off in their success, and then Dennis, their old teammate, was out there from Sweden. They were obviously going to pick him up eventually. Like, it was just the most obvious. Like, you want to join them, they want to join you. That's basically, at the time, by the way, all that stood anyway. You just make the deal. Like, in the modern day, the buyouts are so huge. Like, people will have seen now from some of those. Like, if anyone watches this show, did I not tell you that is literally the rumor at the end of 2023 was that actually it was Cloud9 was going to get Monacy. If you remember, it was like one of those like insider people. I think it was actually like that fucking guy who was like the Orker, the guy who was like the friend of Monacy, even leaked it on stream or something. Like, these moves are always behind the scenes. Well, here's what's mad about that, if you think about it, is that means the player wants to do the move, the other team wants to do the move, and maybe the org even agrees we would sell them if it was right terms. But literally, when not the player, the business guys go into a room and have a conversation or virtually do that. They just don't agree to a number at the end, and so both separate parties have to either stay in some weird like purgatory where they wait for a move to happen, like Nico to Falcons, which, by the way, not only should that have happened 1 year earlier like it did there, I'll reveal what I've been hinting at soon, but put it this way, basically, as far as I know, let's just say that deal was done a long time before you heard publicly it was done, that he was going to Falcons. Like, that's why the whole thing in G2 was like they were doing all tearful goodbye, and there was never, I told everyone on these shows, there was never even a chance he could stay. Like, it was already a done deal a million years earlier. So basically, I do hate where you have these scenarios where like people want to upgrade, they want to play a better CS, they want to kick out the bad player, they want to get in the person who's the right fit and the person who wants to join them, but then it just can't happen. So in a world where actually right now we've hit this really weird sweet spot where there's all these like either good, or in the case of people like the Kindles and the s1mples, like formerly good player you might be able to reclaim or give a different spin in your team. I actually like that these squads, by the way, you can even include Falcons in here, but Falcons, FaZe, they didn't just do what everyone would normally do, which is you go, well, lads, you get one last chance to redeem yourself at the major. Because here's my problem, right? If you're Falcons, you could maybe do that. Except here's the problem. You can't, because actually Falcons, by winning, is now trying to be the number one, aren't they? So actually even they have an impetus to try and upgrade the roster. So there's the angle of like, well, it's good enough, so let's see if we do a miracle run. By the way, if you're praying for your season to be saved by a miracle run at the major, like FaZe would have been, then you're already fucked. Because even if you had it, think about what happened last season. It isn't enough, is it? Like, the joke is, the worst thing that ever could have happened to FaZe Clan would actually have been to win that Shanghai major, because then Brokey probably would just stay for the whole year and they'd just give him 2 seasons to fail, and they would never make this move. So I actually do like that these teams understand, instead of doing what I think Team Liquid did last year, which is like, hey, but if we make a good run, maybe like we can keep the roster. No, the roster's already proven that it's not good enough. So bearing in mind, these are gambles, but I like the gamble because it is a shot in the arm. It's like that's why Carrigan said it best. It's a Hail Mary. You're just going for the idea that, look, right now I can't win the major. Look, you might not like s1mple, you might think it's crazy, but I'll tell you what, when you add s1mple to FaZe Clan, you will now have a greater than 0% chance of winning the major. Before you added him, you had a 0% chance. Like, there wasn't, remember, as we've talked on past, there wasn't even any of that FaZe Clan magic. That shit was gone ages ago. I actually think, for real, that FaZe Clan magic ended after that like Vitality match at kind of 8. That one game teased you that they could be really good, and they've never been as good since. Everything else was just like copium of like, it's not that bad they're losing. Like I could always defend them losing, but I never saw like the upside of like, oh my God, they're back. They're the real face of last year. So I actually think both the moves are great. I even think you can tie this, by the way, to the Falcons one, which is I think a lot of people, KingT, actually do look at Falcons right now and they think, first of all, what the hell? Dexter just won a tournament. Well, he can't stay. Like, it wasn't a tournament with all the teams. So for me, that doesn't even count as a win. That's like when Mouse won the PGL. Like, you wouldn't then, if you had an option to get Modesty, go, nah, you could stay. Because that's not, you haven't won the actual tournament with Vitality and Spirit, etc. Yeah. So, first of all, the Falcons over Dexter was already nothing. But now they've added Modesty. I actually think fans are doing the same thinking that those old teams are. They're going like, yeah, but you're really close to beating them, though. Why do you need to do a roster move? It's like, because why would I want to be really close instead of just being better than them? Like, why don't I actually just... By the way, why don't I just do what Falcons is going to do? Which is, why don't I add Modesty? That's a no-brainer. Then why don't I add the Kiyosuke guy? And then you know what? If that's not enough, I'll add fucking Perfecto too. And then you know what, Sonic? If you don't like that, then I'll bring in... You know what? You just keep going. That. By the way, when you're actually a team like Falcons, you should, because that's how you become number one. And by the way, as I pointed out earlier, in a normal season, it would be totally fine for this current Falcons roster to stay, because you could be number one. Right now, you're literally going head-to-head with like the best team we've ever seen in CS2, who doesn't lose. They just don't lose matches. So I actually think even at the top level, the joke is the number 2 team is actually justified to do some gamble moves too. Like, it even makes sense for them. So I'm with you, mate. I actually think this is a banger. Normally I hate when people do it when there is like a bit of life left in the roster. I think these were all completely the right choices, mate. Every team that made the move now pretty much should have made the move.
Yeah, they definitely should have. And yeah, the Falcons one for me is, why would I, if I'm Falcons, with these players, sit and watch someone else win like everything over me, build an entire era just by beating me in grand finals over and over again? Why would I ever accept that? And then why wouldn't I then go, not only do I want to just beat them, I want to win an event. I want to win a couple of events. Why don't I want to build my own damn era? Why the hell am I settling for just first? No, I want to be first and remembered and hated for the next decade. Like many of us still remember that Astralis. Those who actually watched, because I found out a lot of people actually are newer to the game than Astralis.
Yeah, you have to remember, mate, people forget this. Pro was 7 years ago now. So you have to understand, majority of people you see right on the internet didn't watch it. They just came along 3 years ago. Yeah, it's just true.
I understood when those people hadn't watched SK Luminosity and they weren't like a fan at that time, and you didn't like kind of get scared every time your team faced them. But man, did I resent Astralis at times.
They were tyrants, weren't they? Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, it was oppressive. That's who, as if I'm running an org, that's who I want to be. I want all of you to hate me. And that's what I think Falcons need to do, and that's what it looks like they're heading for.
Yes. No, by the way, all you need to do is this. What you need to do if you're a fan of the modern day who wasn't there when Astralis was, stop because you obviously probably went back and looked at the results and saw the great, but you have to imagine what it's like to be a fan of a team that was a rival of Astralis. Like, try and think about what it's like to be a TL fan and see them bulldoze every other team in the world, including, by the way, like ZywOO's Vitality and fucking s1mple's NAVI, and then still lose every single time and know that you're going to lose every time. And then, by the way, how about being s1mple, being the best player ever, but you still lose to Astralis? Then, but, it just keep going down the list. It was actually a nightmare. Nico had a super team. It didn't matter. Like, you still, in the end, the joke was, it was like one of those jokes. It's like, in the end, we had CS tournaments. Every now and then Astralis lost, and then they'd win 2 trophies, and then we all went home and then waited for the next 2 tournaments. Like, that's how it was. So I know what you mean, mate. You have to seize the chance while it's there. Right. That's a pretty bold opener. Okay, where are we going, Maui? Where's your good point? What are you going for?
Mine is off of a rumor that came out pretty recently. I don't know. The sheep esports people seem to be pumping out everything, but it was on HLTV too, so this seems to be vetted to some degree that SunPayus...
Also, as far as I can tell, in general, sheep esports has in CS so far been pretty accurate. I don't think I've seen them do an outrageous report. It's been disputed sometimes, but it seems like they're pretty good track record.
I haven't seen a miss yet. So I'm not keeping perfect record of everything they're saying, but it seems like everything's been on the money for them. So for G2 though to actually cut ties with Taz and recognize that Hades is just a temporary stand-in and go for SunPayus and Saw is probably one of the better G2 moves I've seen lately. I can't really complain about this one. I feel like, first of all, SunPayus is better than Hades, and it's not like, I don't really think many people thought Hades was going to be the permanent solution to this team. I think he deserved, I don't know if it deserved, I don't mind that he got a chance to prove himself, even though it is under the absolute worst circumstances right now, with Hunter not even being there for them right now, and now they're playing with Taz in his stead, and it's just a mess. I mean, watching that audit game just happen was pretty painful on many levels, actually. But regardless of that, SunPayus is going to be nice. It's going to be an upgrade, and I love SunPayus with Saw. That's the main thing. Like, I think some people might just think SunPayus rating equal this. Is he really that good? But he can fit a system, and he's proven that. With Saw on the current Heroic lineup that he's worked with, and with Saw back on the old Ents roster, SunPayus looked like probably 20% better than maybe SunPayus even is, just because Saw could create game plans. SunPayus could play different styles. He would some games, focus so heavily on an A defense on a map, and then the next game I watch him, and it's practically a completely different SunPayus, because he'll just take what's in the prep and actually follow it to a T. I feel like an Opper that can actually follow an anti-strat and work through it to elevate his team's defense is something that is weirdly a rarity, because so many Oppers probably just want to play their own game and go for the picks that they're comfortable with. So a versatile Opper that can follow a system that is devised by a tactical coach who I already rate, that's a great sign. Sure. And a couple other little tangential narratives to this. One is just that I like that Saw is taking on real challenges, because he could just stay on Heroic with this team that is punching above their weight right now, and we'd say, yeah, great, Saw's doing awesome. But I'm glad that he's taking something where he probably loses some control by going to G2, because it seemed like Petsa and even higher management seem to be making more of the decisions there. And I contrast this with like an Ashe. Ashe with Gamer Legion, for example, kind of ticked me off, because he just kind of did the K Serato or the Tabson move, where he just sat on a team that is otherwise never going to contend for champions. G2 is an org that can bring in people, and when you put Saw on that lineup, I think you could also bring in a better IGL soon enough too. I wouldn't be completely averse to the idea of even just getting the game back together and going for like a Snappy in the future on top of it. And the other slight tangential thing, and it's like almost the petty grievance of this one, is I'm so tired of Nico just saying everything to defend his teammates, when literally the org 6 months later is like, by the way, Nico, that thing you wanted to do, vouching for Taz, putting him as a top 3 coach of the year, yeah, we don't even believe that ourselves.
Right.
Oh, yeah. No, this is...
You got caught off by this Taz straight at the end there, didn't you? I was following him, and they just threw that Taz thing at the end. Fucking okay. It was a mixture of a Taz straight and an Eco straight simultaneously. Two people, one bullet.
That's fine. I'm just...
Okay.
Look, for me, this actually... I think this has more benefits than you've even mentioned. I'm going to throw this in. This is insight provided to me by Ashe himself, directly on an interview. Essentially, as to Snax' calling style and what he does well, he benefits immensely from essentially having preset structures by his coach. And that way he's free to, go outside the lines, do what he does in terms of some slightly more gimmick plays, playing off his very intuitive style that he had as a player. He still has that. He still has that mind for where the gaps are, to then go and play a little more freeform as the IGL, but allow that structure to originally be there from the coach. And I think that's a benefit that you didn't mention, but I think could even make them get more value just out of Snax initially. Now, I'm sure, of course, if they're willing to make this move, they might be willing to change him as well, given, if the results don't pick up fast enough, I think it's a fair trade to make. But for now, you could actually get so much more out of Snax if you just had a coach who made more sense for him. And so a coach who brings in that structure is essentially what they need. Now, of course, SunPayus as an AWPer has always benefited from playing with Saw. We saw him with Zonic, didn't really produce a whole lot. But with Saw, he's always been very strong. And we've seen him on this Heroic roster as they are a team that's punched up, but he's also had really big maps and series against the stronger opponents they've actually managed to face. They haven't played that many due to some LAN struggles from players like xCloud, but they have had moments against bigger teams where SunPayus stepped up and delivered. So no, I think this is a really good move from them. It shows finally some clearer thinking, some forward thinking in terms of how they're going to approach their roster construction, because for a while now it's looked a bit all over the place. So no, I'm 100% on board. This is a great move, but in more ways than just those. It can be the salvation of Snax' career on G2, bring in this kind of coach.
Yeah, I will also say as well, when I did my interview with Ash, where I asked him actually just before Snacks joined, I think I did the talk to Thorin just before Snacks officially joined G2 as the IGL, and I think he already knew at the time that this move was happening, basically. I think this is when he actually told me something like, look, obviously this sounds like mad copium when you've got a legendary player, but he even made it sound like, actually, he thought it would be better in G2, because he actually thought the problem that Snacks had in Gamer Legion was, essentially, he was too used to players being like themselves of like up to date on the meta and how to play top level CS, and so he was sort of taken for granted that you'd like know. Essentially, he didn't want to hold people's hands. He didn't want to do the LXCB and be the guy who's like, I'm going to tell you everything. It was more like, you should know what you're doing here. Like, I'm going to do this, and then we'll meet up at the bomb site is the joke, Whereas in this analogy in Gamer Legion, he had all the younger players and inexperienced players. So the thinking was, if you put him in G2, and by the way, this did work on some level, and he has Nico and Modesty. By the way, players you don't need to hold the hand of at all. They're just going to do their own thing. That would suit them. Well, I will say, by the way, for me, SunPayus is right in that mold. Like, I actually think, I'll do the launders. His time does not count on Falcons, I'm sorry. Because he was the fucking AWP right at the beginning of CS2 when the AWP was completely reamed out, and his team was absolute garbage. Like, they weren't just bad, they were like so bad that I don't think people get this. Like, you can be a good player on a bad team and you will look bad. Like, that's why I think people like Nico's and they're so rare that they can actually just do it no matter what their teammates are. Like, most people, you add in all the small problems that come with being on a bad team. Like, the enemy never has any health taken off him. You get a bad comm. You don't have any fucking clue what they're doing on the anti-strat. People don't fucking properly follow up. They leave you out to go on your own in a wide peak. Oh, there's a million things people can do in a game that can just fuck it up. It's not as though we're all just getting identical crosshair scenarios and he's just missing the shots. Because this is one area that drives me crazy, right? When s1mple was announced last year as the stand-in for Falcons, everyone cried their fucking eyes out about how unfair it was to SunPayus. SunPayus went away, barely got to play any CS, by the way. He just sat on the bench for ages, and then he came to this heroic squad where they just didn't do much at the beginning of the year. Everyone's already made him off. Like, mate, he hasn't even vaguely had a chance to fail yet. Like, for me, this is like, I'm finally ready to unpause on him being out of Falcons. Like, I thought for me, he was the obvious best player in Falcons. He still was all right. I always used to say that, Murray. He wasn't elite, but at the time, you could only count about 5 good AWPers in CS2. He was the 6th one, if there was 5. You know what I mean? Like, that's why for this move, I'm actually kind of shocked people aren't more hyped about both parts. Because on the SunPayus one, I would just say this to the fans. Who else shall we take for the AWP? We can't get ZywOo. We can't get Shiro. We just lost Monacy. Like, that's it. Like, we're not even going down a level when we go to SunPayus. Like, you might say, get ready for the ultimate hypocrisy. You might have the gall to actually look me in my eyes and go, what about Dexter? Fuck you. I just said that for the last whole year and you all told me he sucks dick until he just won PGL. But you're now a big fan of Dexter, yeah. Fuck you and everything. And the horse you rode in on, mate. Because the problem with that is, you're the same guy last year who'd be like, SunPayus is way better than. In fact, wait a minute, didn't you all say in Heroic they should just replace Dexter with SunPayus? That was already late last year. So anyway, bring the temperature down again. It's all right. It's all good. Listen, Dexter's safe. He won a tournament, Thorin. It's all right. He's going to get on a good team eventually. It's all going to work out. But anyway, that tilts me because people are doing that thing where they're just like whiplash, changing their opinion. Right? You all know on the base level that SunPayus is a good player. Also, by the way, I'll tell you what, like I said, I think he's a mega self-directed player. But I agree with Maui, by the way. I always used to say, when I saw him on Movistar, I actually did think, like, bro, this is like the Spanish device. Like, he clearly doesn't just sit on a bomb site like, I am a turret, I'm holding. You could see he would move around. He clearly interacts with the in-game leader. Like, he's definitely like a fucking guy who has like his own ideas. And it's not a meme. He is like fucking the gel of AWPers. If you put this guy in a normal group stage game, he's good. You put him in an actual group stage match against, like, Vitality, this is one of the few guys that actually might pop off, mate. And I'll tell you an angle that's actually mad underrated about this guy. Maui knows about this. That's actually real. He has a big ego in a good way. By the way, I want my star AWP to have a big ego. That's the guy hitting all the fucking shots. I want him to actually be delusional enough to think he can beat fucking Monacy and all those guys when he faces them. This guy does. And I actually think that's what G2 needs right now. Because the problem in G2 is if you look at the players, it's still got a good set of players, Maui. The problem is, though, they don't have massive personalities. Like, they actually have a group of players at the moment that are sort of like quiet guys, or like they haven't just been in the team long enough yet to start. This guy's going to walk right in, by the way, and expect to be like the number 9 star player, basically. And he should be. And if you look at this squad, they've still got enough there. They could actually have, like, you know, let's say some playoff runs where he could have a chance to actually get to the stage and show you what he's capable of. And then the Saw one is a slam dunk. Who's even complaining about that? Unless you could have signed Ash or Blade or something. Mate, there aren't that many other people even are in the mix for the best best coach. The Taz one, I always said this the whole time he was there. Look, if he'd have done something insane here, then I'd have given him the credit. For me, he won a couple of blasts because he had absolutely the best individual players who just went fucking crazy and smurfed Space Jam style. Like, that wasn't coaching that did that. It wasn't IGL that did that. So I think if you look at Saw, it's a slam dunk to do this signing. Taz was a gamble in this case, maybe to keep Nico, to keep him happy, whatever. It didn't work out. I mean, even then, he still won a couple of blasts. You're not going to cry your eyes out. But if you can get Saw, you take it easily. Because actually, the biggest joke of all is, I think what's impressed people in the scene the most behind the industry aspect isn't even all the shit you're all thinking of in Ents. It's all the shit he did in these heroic rosters where he kept getting his players taken every 3 months. Then he would re-up and like qualify to the major and be in tournaments. And you'd be like, what? So I think that's made people think this guy has crazy range as a coach. Like, I'll tell this story, but I've said before, I've heard it was mainly Snappy who did the actual scouting in Ents, but it's so hard to work with the players once he got them there. It's not like he was just giving the players, like, oh, like, you tell me what else, Snappy. He just got the players through the door and then Saw did the rest. So I also think if you're G2, here's why the obvious 2 people for me to sign was either Ash or Saw. Because, mate, G2 has proven over the last few years, they don't sign Monacy type people when they're Monacies. They'll gamble when you're young, or they'll get an older player or a mid player. They don't sign massive players. They don't pay giant buyouts. So in my opinion, if you're those teams, you have to have people who can get you someone before they're Monacy. You have to get the people who are going to scout the next guy or do like this move here. Like this, like essentially, I can vouch for the SunPayus guy. He'll still be good enough. I know everyone else doesn't want him, but like that's what you need because he's going to make your budget work. So I think it's a banger move. Look, let's be real. The real problem if you're a G2 fan is none of these moves get you back to where you were at the end of last year where you really could have won the major. Like, you're not going to be in that position because unfortunately you can't afford to lose Nico and Monacy. Like, those are players that can't be replaced unless you are Falcons, I'm afraid. So, and the joke is they themselves just bought them, so that doesn't even help you. So I actually think this is a banger move. I think it's good to put it in good as well. I think both these players, by the way, here's the thing. I don't know what the roster will be in a year from now. There could be many other players coming in and out, but I think these people will be here. Like, these are the people I'd be, if I were them, by the way, basically in this squad, I would just for real build around Saw, SunPayus, Malbs, Heavy God. That's it. The rest of them, it depends what we're doing. Like, it's only going to be IGL. Who knows what's going on? The rest of them can come or go, but that's a solid core to build like the 7th best team in CS from. You could do that. I think it's not a bad move. I've got quite a simple good point. It's just one that allows us to do the classic move and just glaze really great players. So because the year began with just Spirit, Vitality came along, and if you remember, at the beginning of the year when the G2 roster was scoffed as fuck when they lost Nico, Monacy himself was actually having some dodgy tournaments at the beginning. He was having some games where you're like, something going on. That's why, by the way, unfortunately, much like Device himself when he had that thing where whatever went on in Sweden with his partner, everyone heard that rumour of like, oh, his girlfriend broke up with him late last year and that's like wrecked it. Did say whether or not that is actually a correlation, the timing was a bit suspicious because that's exactly the time when Monacy inexplicably like regressed 2 years in his play. If you go and look at the stats now, if you go and watch tournaments now, boys, that amazing #1 player race of last year is just on again. It's the exact same 3 players. They're all there again. They're all cooking. Like ZywOo, Donk, and Monacy are all themselves contender for best player in each tournament, best player in the world. And the best part is as well, by the way, just like last year, they're all 3 on contender teams again. Now that Falcons is actually powered up, they're all on teams that, in theory, this is my favourite part, because I don't think we've ever had this in history. If you go back to past years, most times one of the contenders, it would be his team that would hold him back. In theory, all 3 of these guys' teams can put them in position, the semis and the finals, where they can do the rest. And if they really are the best player, it gives you a chance to win. So the reason I love that, essentially, the real world #1 race is back on, because I like the race to be decided by the player, not by the team. And, you know, essentially, I don't like the idea, even though it didn't happen, I don't like the idea that if Zipnix plays way better than Edward, then like Device is better than s1mple. It's like, I don't even know what that means. That equation doesn't even make sense in my brain. But that is how we judge CS in the past years, I'm afraid. So I think it's awesome that in theory, all 3 of these guys, if they just play the absolute best yet, they can all be #1 again now. I know it's a little bit, Monacy's got a little bit of catch up, but I'll tell you what, he's been fucking catch up the last month and a half or so. So what do you think, KingT? The race is on. It's back on.
Yeah, 100%. I tweeted about this after I think I watched an absolute corker of a series from him at Blast Rivals, and I was just like, yeah, we're actually cooking again. This isn't a dead year for Monacy. And look, when you go back and check the numbers, you realize realistically his year is tainted by a really rough Katowice, and that's about it. Every other event, he's putting up his pretty standard numbers that you've come to expect from Monacy, near enough a 1.3 rating, 0.8 KPR, all the juicy numbers we love. So no, it is definitely back on, but you're right, he does have a bit of catching up to do. Thankfully, he's that kind of guy who will eventually make that case real, because he's going to be so electric on stage. He's going to win clutches. He's going to have highlight moments that really just stick in your head. He's one of those players who just has that sort of aura. Like, I remember a MonteCristo clutch. Hell, I remember entire MonteCristo maps. He can have that sort of effect, that lingering presence in the way he plays and in the way he dominates a map, that, yeah, he will be in that contention at the end of the year. Now, will he have as sparkling of a consistency as a player like ZywOo will? No. And I don't think he'll have even the fragging numbers that will compare with Donk's, just because if you've looked into Donk's fragging numbers, on the surface, they're bonkers. When you go beneath the surface, you dig a little bit, even just a tad, you find out they're genuinely unbelievable. So he's not going to be able to contend with them in that sense, but he will, just through sheer miracle working, return into that conversation. It won't be as convincing statistically, but trust me, people like me will make that argument. We'll show you the highlights. We'll break it down. Okay. He's going to make some impossible rounds happen over and over again, like win Falcons big series, win Falcons big titles, and that'll be the case for him by the end of the year.
By the way, shout out just briefly, shout out to ZywOo fans, because you guys make us look like geniuses, that we get to have the hot take like MonteCristo could be the best player. They think that's like not even on the table in these conversations. I don't know why you guys are so fucking predictable is nuts, because you just look stupid then, mate. What you should do if you were smart, this is where you're not smart, for fuck's sake. You want MonteCristo and Donk to be insanely generationally good, because then if ZywOo's better than them, it makes him even greater, you dumb fox. If they're all just secretly frauds and washed, then it doesn't count for anything, does it? You're just beating nobody. Think it through, you dumb fuck. It's why the dumbest angle of all time, I've always said it, is why the Messi fans say Ronaldo sucks and why the Ronaldo fans. You idiot! You want the rival to be the best player ever, so that your player is the best player ever. So it's like the 1A, 1B. So now that's the best part. And in my opinion, that's the dumbest part about, you know, when people do that thing, because you know Nero gets it every time now about fucking MonteCristo. The dumbest thing is, last year was the best race of all time for number one, because it really was like 1A, 1B, 1C. Like, you just essentially pick what your criteria is. Like, I think that's fucking sick. It's just fucking dope to have that.
Personally, I love this conversation, and I love that they are in positions where they can all fight for it, because they all just fit the different archetypes of players. I love that the discussion has to go beyond the numbers.
Oh, it is like a shorted anime or something, isn't it? Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's not like we're getting two really aggressive oppers or something like that. And, you know, like every now and then you see this completely pleb thread about like, oh, Donk is abusing entry fragging or something like that. Like it boosts your rating or something ridiculous. It's just so bogus. And I think like the combating the well-roundedness of ZywOo, the op brilliance of MonteCristo, and that just micro mastery of Donk is just a joy. Like it's cool that they all have different strengths. They barely have any weaknesses, really, but it's just kind of how they fit onto their team. And I hope we don't, I hope that the community doesn't just say ZywOo most MVPs equal best, though, which I feel like people are so lazily going to do so frequently. But because in my eyes, yes, I do think that they're on teams that have put themselves in winning positions, but I have a slight inkling of a feeling that this is a withering spirit. It just doesn't seem like they're making the leaps that they need to in order to push themselves into the conversation with Falcons and with Vitality. But who knows if the second half of the season can change something up. But I'm sure we'll talk more about what they could do at another time.
Okay. All right, let's move on then. Okay, so if we go to the bad, what is bad at the moment, KingT?
Oh, this is something I didn't really expect to be hearing so much about, reading so much about. But yeah, now that ZywOo has got his Grand Slam, of course, that reopens the s1mple ZywOo GOAT debate, which, of course, is this two-horse race. No one ever gets mentioned. And I have a number of little, just essentially petty grievances with the way this whole conversation's already being structured, some of the mistakes people are making. And I just want to start with, we're comparing across games now. That seems to be where we're at.
Oh, true.
Despite that, we're not doing anything beyond Go. Like, we're not going further back for some reason, despite going across games, so just talking about CS GOATs. And otherwise, the other side of that is people are treating like Go and 2 like they are the same game, which they clearly aren't. So we had this entire section of time where AWPers weren't AWPing. It was a completely new game with all these rough edges that people didn't like. Players stopped playing. It's clearly a separate era, yet we're doing this weird sort of brushing over of that detail just to have this GOAT debate. That's really frustrating me. We're already having people misremembering or I think in some cases, surely misrepresenting history. The most notable example, of course, being Loba's strange take about which players are winning with help versus without help. Anyone who watched early Vitality knows that ZywOo did not have a star-studded roster when he first won tournaments. You can say they were online or say maybe he was getting a lot of really good flashbangs, but come on, don't take the piss. He didn't have a star-studded roster back in 2019, 2020. So there's a lot of these little things that really confuse me. And then on top of that, we're in a game that's barely 25 years old, talking about potentially a debate that's only been raging 10 to 11 years. Yeah, we're already flinging shit at each other like we're NBA fans talking across eras about how this era's trash. No, this era's complete trash. It's all...
Bro, Bobski essentially did do that. Bobski made it sound like Nip played against actual plumbers. Like, it didn't even say something like that. Like, but the problem is you've compressed the timeline. Again, you've compressed the time. Listen, that's vaguely plausible for the 1950s in basketball. Like, you're making it like 10 years ago. I know it's too bad in it.
Yeah, it's getting on my nerves. And I'm like, could we just set the rules a bit and maybe have like an entrance exam that you have to pass before you're allowed to talk on it? Like, if you don't know who Waller is, don't join the GOAT debate of all of seats. Like, stick to the 2 years you've been following and stop trying to have this conversation, because I feel like a lot of this is coming down to just people on forums clicking through stats and then trying to shout at each other.
Yes.
Like, it's so pointless and it achieves nothing when we could have so many more interesting conversations about great players in different eras, great players and their styles. This is just rather frustrating and pointless. That's my entire take about it.
Okay, so it's the way that the discussion's framed is what you don't like.
Oh, the way it's framed, the way people are already trying to make it so incredibly tribalistic, the way we're already so dismissive of our very limited history. Like, we lose when we have a debate in this way.
Yeah, okay. Meta reasoning.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a cool conversation. A lot of angles here for it. I feel like the GOAT debate, yeah, it should be separated. It should probably be separated for just CS:GO versus CS2. I love that on a desk at Blast, Vu said, well, the GOAT debate, s1mple's the GOAT of CS:GO, and Donk is the GOAT of CS2. So it's already...
That's the way you do it.
By the way, masterfully... This is why I like that guy, mate. He's living my legacy on. That's how you masterfully tilt the ZywOo fans. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like my joke. Wasn't my joke like that, Maui? It was like, s1mple's the GOAT of this. I was like, and then ZywOo's the GOAT of being French and having the name beginning with Z. So some stupid... I was obviously being uncharitable, obviously.
Yeah. I feel my least favorite part of all of it still is just the whole because it came up again in the streak discussion also about NIP streak shouldn't count.
Sure.
Look at some of the teams and the individuals that they were playing against. Many legendary players, by the way. They beat many legend players that have been on top 20 lists during that time. Since then, won big lands at some point. Major future major champions. They weren't playing bums. They were playing people that were dedicating their lives to the game. So I do hate that part of it. Yeah, the discussion is messy. I feel like that's kind of part of the fun, though, of these discourses is just that they're a little bit scattered, and half the time, though, you get somebody arguing one point, you have Kassad taking just no charitable angle of it, and then calling the person insane. So it makes podcasts work. I'll tell you that.
There's so much to this, but obviously I don't want to make it a 1 hour just fucking rant session. But we can go back and forth a little bit. This could be a fun section. We can go back and forth if you want. So there's a few parts on this. For the meta discussion, I will say it fucking sucks the way it's done currently. Because first of all, as I alluded to earlier, I think any conversation like this, think about when, if you don't know, we once did a special one-off episode of this show, almost at the end of CSGO, when, I think it was in 2022 or something, where me and Maui did who's the best NA player ever in CS. It was Elise versus Twists. And if you notice the way we did that, the whole way we established the ground rules was, obviously we acknowledge they're both really insane and they both could be number one, right? Everyone else doesn't even start these convos like that, Maui. They start the convo like, s1mple sucks, s1mple sucks dick, and ZywOo, I'm out already. That's not interesting to anyone to start the convo like that. What you want to do, like I said in all those convos, is you actually, this is where people are way too reductive. You actually need to start the discussion way more broadly, like I showed in that episode. What you need to do is go, right, who would even be the real GOAT GOAT candidates. So, for example, assuming we ignore what you said, KingT, because I agree, it completely ruins the whole conversation of like, CSGO isn't CS2, so I already don't know how we're doing like the GOAT of CS or whatever the fuck. So, if we ignore that and we just look at the individual games, the obvious angle I always want to bring up to people is you have to ask questions like, why isn't device being mentioned? Now, look, you can then say, I am going to dismiss him. So, for example, if you said to me, well, the peak of devices eye test wasn't as good, that's a great angle. That's a great reason why he might not be there. But the reason why I bring this up is, notice how people do this thing that I hate, which is you bring up a metric that you already plan on applying to that one player. So what you're going to tell me is, but now that ZywOo has the most MVPs, he must be the GOAT. Well, then by that logic, explain to me why you didn't have devices the GOAT before. By the way, I've never heard a single s1mple or ZywOo fan ever explain why that made device not the GOAT. I get it. I know what they actually infer, which is what they mean is, when I watch him play, he's not as good. I agree, but that shows it's the eye test that you're going off, you idiot. Not the fucking stat on the screen, isn't it? And also, spoiler, MVP absolutely is tied to your fucking team strength. Like, you can do that thing like they do, KingT, like you implied, where you talk about, like, essentially what you're asking is, did he have other stars on his team? My problem with the ZywOo discussion always has been, he hasn't had a lot of star teammates, except like Spinks and now Rops. But I'll tell you what, if you look at the floor level of his team, beyond the Kyojin Masuta roster, he's had a lot of really good veterans and like mega people have won before and people could play a role. He's had like essentially like a baseline that was sometimes better. The difference is, s1mple would have Electronic and then he'd have like Zeus and Edward actively inting the game. Like, that's like, I mean, I've got one thing that's way better, a star partner, but I've also got like two saboteurs, two fucking imposters in the team trying to kill everyone while we're doing the tasks. Like, that's hard in its own way. So I think already you have to do that. So I obviously I don't have devices my GOAT of CS. I think it is, by the way, I think it's between, if you add in CS2 and CSGO, the longevity, the eye test, and how good they are, etc., does mean it probably is ZywOo and s1mple. They're the obvious ones because everyone else has a factor against him. Yeah. Device doesn't have the eye test. Nico doesn't have the trophies, unfortunately, and he obviously has had a bunch of chalk jobs in the finals, etc. You just go down the list. There aren't that many people left at that point. And by the way, no other name deserves to be on there. Even the other people who get third or fourth, like the Ropses and the Shira, you're not on that list, mate. You just don't get to be on. You haven't got anything in any of the areas. But this is why I hate it, though, because then people make all these weird arguments. By the way, if you're a ZywOo fan, I'll tell you the best argument to start. I'll do a video on this one day. Don't worry. The best argument is just this. When I watch him with my eyes, I think he's the best player ever. Then add in things like Andy's done it for many, many years. Andy can hit every shot. Andy's won this. Add those in as secondary things. You can already make that case. I could make a video, I will do it one day, of why ZywOo's the best player. Look, it's not my opinion, but I could essentially build the case and make it pretty legit. The reason I hate it, though, is people are doing that thing, which I think is just bad faith discussion. Go like this, Maui. It's essentially what every LeBron fan has told you for the last 10 years. They go, well, what would he have to do to be better than Michael Jordan? No, it's not. They never explain, Maui, what he would fail to do that would make him not as good as Michael Jordan. That's never added. Even though that's actually implied within the question. That's not, what is it? It's a bad faith question because all they're basically saying is, look, I'm actually just deciding I like the player I like best. But what can I say that could convince you? What can I change to change your mind? It's not going to change my mind. Because what's weird is, surely if you're a ZywOo fan, it had nothing to do with winning the major. Like, wait, you're telling me him beating Into the Breach, fucking Apex and Game Elite, he must be the greatest of all time. No, if anything, he's the greatest in spite of that, you idiots. Like, that was a fucking Garbo run. Like, the joke is, his Caveats and Cologne runs are way better than that. I wouldn't even focus on the fucking major, you idiots. And lastly, I want to quickly point this one out. I'll tell you the ultimate example of how people are just doing bad faith arguments about, like, trophies. Because have you noticed how they keep saying that line that kills me inside? They go, ZywOo has won everything. Now, what's crazy about the way that's semantically phrased, KingT, is that makes it sound like, well, Device has won everything and s1mple's won everything, except Device hasn't won Cologne or whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, no, me winning 4 majors isn't like you winning 1. That we didn't both complete Mario 3 there, and I just did a speed run to get a better time. 4 majors is like 4 times the bit of what he... So already that's dirty as fuck that people are doing that, especially when, by the way, when, as I pointed out, you have the most Fugazi major win of all time. Like, spoiler, if you want to actually show me something, show me another major. Like, by the way, if you do it, then we can have this conversation about resume. Right now, that resume is actually a tiny bit propped up in that one regard, that the major one isn't as sick. By the way, the Caveats and Cologne runs are magical, like I said. Those 2 are bangers. And then lastly, I'll actually... Wait a minute. Oh, there's two other things to say. One is very quickly, this one, which is on the NIP one. There's even counterintuitive logic that people miss about that. So, people think, well, if NIP wasn't playing very many good teams and the level was worse, then it's actually easier to win. No, it's the same logic, if you think, Maui, of why it's actually really hard to win in basketball in like the 1960s. Bro, there's 8 teams. That means you're just always playing the absolute best squad. Like, when there's actually not many good teams, it means every tournament you have to play very games and beat Kenny S and fucking Existence and script. That means that they don't get knocked out by a rando and you play Game of Legion in this analogy, boys. Like, this is like if Heroic was always in the final, you actually had to beat Heroic to win the fucking tournament. Like, in its own way, it's easier in the sense the field is easier, but actually that means you're almost guaranteed to play an elite team to win a tournament. It actually can be very hard to do those streaks. And then lastly, I'll just tie into what KingT said at the beginning. The other problem here is we're being way too generous to these fucking ZywOo stands because we're actually acting like they saw the last 10 years of CS. And here's my problem. Yeah. If you didn't even fucking watch it, don't tell me that I'm wrong. You can't even logically have an opinion. You might think I'm a bozo, but at least I saw the match. Because what they do is this. You can always tell when a motherfucker's being on a Wikipedia, mate. Because here's what they do. They do this tactic where if they'd have seen the player play, they'd just give an opinion. What they do instead is this, KingT. They just ask bad faith questions that never end. So they go, well, then why did s1mple only have one major win yet? And then if you answer it, they just go to another question. They go, well, then why this? It's like, you know the real reason you're asking me that is because you didn't watch. You don't know the answer to these questions. Like, you'd be telling me if you'd watched that fucking game, you daft fucker. You'd have a mad opinion. So if you didn't actually watch the games, you can still say, in my limited experience at the end of CSGO and CS2, I think ZywOo's the best of all time. But put it this way, if you didn't see s1mple play in 2018, I don't think you should be commenting on whether ZywOo is better than him at CS. Because that's a pretty big year to go watch. And by the way, go and look at it. He probably played like 25 lands or something like it. It's not like a minor thing to ignore in history. That would be like when the modern day NBA fan does do that. They all talk about whether LeBron is better than like Kevin Durant. I'm like, did you start watching 10 years ago? Because if you did, like, you can't be in this conversation. Like, you missed the whole fucking peaks, you idiot. Like, you never saw 2009 LeBron or KD in 2012 or whatever when they were starting to cook properly. So I hate that part too. But you're wasting your time arguing with someone whether you don't know it, but they didn't even watch the game. It's just a guy coming up with a theory from a wiki or something.
Yeah, the Liquipedia and HLTV stat page warrior has got a lot of things to say on a conversation they really have no right being a part of. That's the problem. And we have so many useful tools in that sense, in terms of things like Wikipedia, things like HLTV, where people can go look up the history. But we also have things like just to go watch the games. No one does that. No one clicks the
exactly.
No one watches any demos.
And we're all supposed to be CS fans, by the way. Spoiler, these guys are the best players ever. You're going to really enjoy watching these games. I'd go watch them.
Yeah, watch their POVs.
It's going to be way better than watching G2 versus Odic. Forget that one. Put that 100%. To the shelf.
Yeah, I could have told you how that game was going to be. It was going to be an ugly mess that G2 lose. You could have spent 3 hours watching POV demos from 2015 to 2019. Yeah. And had way more fun. Honestly, that stuff's pretty cool to watch still to this day. I occasionally go back and watch like literal VOD demos from just one POV from retro games that I watched perhaps on broadcast. I never actually watched how Kenny S played that one.
Yeah.
I never watched exactly how, because I wasn't really a VOD watcher.
Yeah. No, that's true.
So that's really fascinating. And you get so much more to say, so much more insight into how players played and what you can actually say in their defense or to attack them, to break down what they did wrong in their career. There's so much more interest and intrigue in watching these sorts of things compared to just reading the stats and just typing something on a forum. Like, watch the games. Be a real fan.
Yeah, that's so many of these discussions, people just want to reduce it to the numbers so they can contribute to the argument without actually doing the most enjoyable legwork of just watching the game more, which is why we're all here. A lot of the discussions also, if you just had to pin them down and say, what is your rubric or what's your criteria of the different factors that construct a GOAT argument, these guys would be hard pressed to find consistency, because they would want to bring up something like MVP. It's almost like if you reverse engineer what they said, they practically all have to say Device is the GOAT GOAT.
I think so.
So it's so hard for these people to actually stand up on any legitimate argument, which is why they fall back on the numbers and just say that if you don't get it, you're an idiot or something like that. It's a great topic because people just get way too reductive and they try to simplify these things, when one of the best ways to look at it is just kind of like, I mean, like the ring argument versus actually the contributor, like who's the real guy that's actually delivering the trophy. And in some ways, like s1mple's cologne in 2016 is more impressive than anything ZywOo's done in a major playoffs. You know, like beating NAVI, beating NAVI and Fnatic in consecutive series with a graffiti defining moment is more. It's more interesting, bare minimum. It's just better than what he's done in his own major grand finals and his own run to win a trophy that now you look back at the teams and you even have to kind of parse through like, oh, was this like a legendary lineup that he took down? And then you see it's like Kiosk. What happened to him? Like what happened? Who was that guy before this event also? You know, in a weird, funny way. If anything, actually, what ZywOo should want the most is for everybody on that Gamer Legion lineup, as it's pretty much just been Shuhei and Ima, he wants them to actually have resurgences in their career. So you can look back at the tape and say, oh, yeah, wait, remember? This is a legendary A-core who won 4 MVPs himself, but that just doesn't exist. You know, the people that were on these rosters, like, it's almost in a way now, looking at it, he beat... Wait, did they beat Apex in the semifinals instead of Liquid also? Like, it's almost good that Kixan's a good in-game leader now for ZywOo's case. Sure. You know, like all of these things are helping retroactively build the idea that this wasn't the most cupcake major ever, but you can't be revisionist about this stuff. Like this was like Apex lineup that also was just kind of coming out of nowhere and just had a really nice run. And the player that Kixan and the leader Kixan is today was not the guy he was 2 years ago.
By the way, that's even where people don't know. I could do that VOO thing. It'd be way more charitable. I could just go, so you're telling me ZywOo beat Thomas, then he beat Steeko, then he beat Kiosk to win a major. Like, exactly, I've just fucking destroyed your whole dreams there, motherfucker. But I'm too fair. I won't even do it. Even though, by the way, that's straight fire. So let's keep that in the back somewhere. I'll go back to that at some point. It's all good. It's all good.
The legendary Rollin.
I know, exactly.
I'm sorry.
No one even remembers he existed. The joke is that, in fact, there's already one thing that's really sad, Maui. I tell you what's not even uncharitable. If you are a fan watching this show right now, pause the video, don't cheat, and try in your mind to remember all 5 players who into the breach. That was their quarterfinal opponent at a major. I don't think you can remember all 5 names. I think Maui just gave you a massive clue fucking saying Rallen, by the way. I think you would have got...
I just tried, and I can't get...
I said Thomas. I think some of you would have said Cypher, but I think after that, a lot of you would have been struggling for even that 4th name. Never mind the fucking 5th one. You wouldn't have got there, mate. You wouldn't have got there. You wouldn't have got there. Also, by the way, I'll just say on the end, this is why, I'll tell you one thing we can very briefly touch on, Maui. This is why, the other thing that I find boring, but I don't get baited into it much, mate, is I'll never let the bad faith fans tell me what my opinion is. So, you know, when they try and tell me that you and me have said that ZywOo chokes every playoffs, is a bad player, and is like, I think the other one is that we say he has bad numbers in every playoff. By the way, what I've done, if you ever go back, is I've only ever done it when he actually choked guys. Like in actual games where he had a bad map 3, or he had a bad final, or he just dropped off in the playoffs compared to... That's when I've commented. Now, the reason why I think it sucks that they then try and make it think that we're saying ZywOo sucks is, I just told you, for me, he would be number 2. Like, he's obviously fucking insane. The joke is, if s1mple didn't exist, I'd be saying ZywOo's number 1, you idiots. Like, you're doing that thing where, because you like him, you're doing it whether you like him or dislike him. I'm not doing it whether I like or dislike him. Like, the joke of it all is, I think I made it pretty clear, I think Nico's a bit of a wanker as a person, mate. He's fucking sick at CS, though. I'll tell you what, I don't have to have a coffee with him. I just watch him play CS and shoot people with AK. It's dope. It doesn't have to affect my opinion about him as a fucking player, does it? So, look, it is nice that he hasn't won yet. Like, but then again, pay that money back 10 years ago, you little rat, like I told you to. As I've said before, you cursed yourself doing that. Go on.
Yeah, I feel like people have really wrongly conflated for your narrative, what they conflated was you saying that he hasn't had any results in the playoffs of a major for like his first 3 majors or something like that. And
which is just a fact. It's just a factual. It's provable. It's not even an opinion.
Yeah, he just. I mean, he kind of flunked out of his first few majors that he played, and for me, people always just say anything that you or Richard, and now it's sometimes even Kassad.
Oh my lord! Okay, right.
Which is the worst. Kassad is the one where I think the most of it.
Andy's the guy who every episode says he disagrees with you on everything, and then they're like, they think the same. They're the same person.
I've seen people make those takes. You know, I've seen people say like, Maui said this, and it's like that is literally a Kassad take. But either way. And the other and for me also, like, the only time I ever said anything about it was just laughing at the fact that map 3 IEM Dallas last year,
of course,
Stewie 2K outranked ZywOo.
No, that was a good example, mate. That's an example of exactly where if someone's telling me this is the GOAT player, I'm going to look at a map like that and go, what's going on? That's supposed to be a gimme.
Exactly. So that, I mean, it's not. I don't know. Like I think if people have tried to look back in these threads and then they end up just not really finding anything, actually.
No, I do notice, by the way, here's a challenge for the people who hate Mauisnake. I notice not one of you motherfuckers links to anything. You don't have a quote he said in actual text that's real. By the way, he's done hours of streaming. You don't have a single clip. You don't have one Twitch clip ever.
Okay, actually, this one was circulating on HLTV all of last year. And I had to get ahead of it because I actually had to delete a clip somebody made on my channel because they purposely clipped it at a certain point to make it sound like I was being vicious to ZywOo. So the clip actually goes like, the only thing I really hate about Vitality is ZywOo fans. And then basically someone clipped it right before I said fans.
Oh, get out. Come on.
Yeah, so then they clipped it like that.
Spoiler! You've just proved his point. That's why we hate ZywOo fans, you fucking idiots. That's why we hate you.
Yeah, no, literally, it was just that. And then people just kept clipping and posting that same clip. And I was like, okay, this is good for my stream brand. But after a while, I was like, okay, this is getting out of hand. People think I hate ZywOo, which
bullshit.
Is like, literally, if you just watch the full VOD, which you were able to for months after that, you could have just clipped that and the context would have immediately been there. So I just deleted that clip completely because people still think I hate ZywOo when it's like,
here's the problem you have,
I hate his fans.
I actually know what this phenomenon is because if you notice, I always try to like fucking look at humans like I'm Jane Goodall looking at the monkeys like, fascinating behaviour. Like I'm like that fucking meme, right? So when I look at this, right, fans out there, obviously in this particular case, you could also imagine ZywOo fans a bunch of chimps just throwing their shit and wanking off all over the fucking cage. But anyway, in this particular case, what does my head in is like basically if you think about this exact scenario we're talking about, they themselves are just doing it where what's actually making them mad, Maui, I've observed this and I've nailed it. What makes them mad is there isn't a famous person who says what they think about, what they hate about ZywOo. Like they want there to be someone like you or me or Cassad who actually has the real opinion that they go on stream every time and say ZywOo sucks and he chokes every player. The problem is that person doesn't exist. That's a fact. That's an imaginary person. Look, there's fans do that. I agree. Look, obviously there'll be some simple fan on fucking or modesty fan on HLTV forums doing that. But I think people get mad when there's not like an actual recognizable face you can attach to an opinion. So in a weird way, sadly, because we're like the villains of the scene, they just give us all the opinions they want to like shoot down, basically, mate. So the joke is like, like I said, they try to make it that our take is ZywOo sucks. It's like, give me a break. My take was he's number 2, you fuck. It's a bit different from sucks, you know.
And again, like the whole reason why I constructed the cultural impact idea of ZywOo not having that, and it's really his biggest flaw, is because his game is so bulletproof. It's so airtight. I can't actually poke holes in what he's doing in the server almost ever. So if you ever want to find a way to just slight him, it's just like he doesn't talk shit to his opponents like s1mple did, and he doesn't have edgy streams like s1mple did, and s1mple also, when he walks around, he has aura. Like, that's just it. That's just
and the other thing about his game, but this is actually a strength in its own way, is he does actually have like that famous fucking Olaf Meister Guardian meme. He actually does have the game where you go, has he done anything? You hit the scoreboard. He goes, he's got 22 kills. Like, what the fuck? He actually does have the game where he can even do the boring kills and he just racks them up. It's true. It's also
until his clutch in the group stage of the Paris Major, where he got that 1v...
The G2 one, yeah.
The G2 one. The nuke G2 one. His best highlight, and everybody would send you this, if you say, what's ZywOo's best highlight? P250 Tetris online, and nobody could even name the event. It's like IEM Beijing Haidian 2020. And it was like, reminder, guys, that was in everybody's bedrooms.
Okay,
like,
true.
Come on.
True. Anyway... I thought it was a good little tangent we did there. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. By the way, that also won't change all the haters say that we all say the same shit. It's all good. We know the way they're bread spotted, as we say in England. So
yeah, some people will take our defense at this point because we've reminded them that They're creating straw mans for us at this point. Like,
and I'll just say this. The other thing that does tilt me is I get really bored with when fans do this. You notice what they don't understand is anyone can look smart if they're the one setting the framing of the discussion constantly. Because as I just said earlier, when they when you give them a point, they just pivot to a new point and they don't actually address your aspect. So another part that I hate about this aspect when you're framing it is you'll then make it sound like if someone says m0NESY's really good. Like, I noticed this is what's so weird about ZywOo fans. You'd think you would have learned from what s1mple fans did to you before ZywOo had had longevity to prove that he was as good. And you wouldn't then turn around and do exactly the same thing to m0NESY. But you do that. Because what it shows is you never cared about that behaviour. You just cared about who ZywOo was the target. Like, you're totally fine using every piece of sophistry and bad faith argument against Donk or against ZywOo, against m0NESY, as long as it props ZywOo up. So you're doing the same stupid behaviour, you guys. If you hated when s1mple fans did that to you, you're now doing that to them. I think it's whack. Not least because, by the way, to quickly touch on what we said in that first point about the title race, I agree with you, Maui. One of the best things about the title race is the three players don't have that much in common except they're sick at CS. Like, if you think about it, right, ZywOo actually is supposed to be the finished product, and he's just sort of like deciding the final touches to the masterpiece of who he is. m0NESY's in the middle, where he's sort of had enough time, he's got his strong identity, and he's taking control of the game, but he's still got to like do it for a few more years. I actually think the Donk one's the stupidest one of all, because it's why I had such a hard time making him number one. The stats are so impossible. He probably has to be number one. But I also think he does remind me of like 2000s LeBron now, where it's like he's an absolute like demon in terms of like his impact in the game, but he's not polished. He's not super well-rounded. Like people like m0NESY and ZywOo is way ahead of him in terms of how well-rounded they are. Like it's just like a brute force to me. Like I can say like LeBron when he used to just run through everyone, he couldn't ever stop him going to the basket. He was just fucking like twice as fast as everyone. That's what Donk's like. So to me, I also think you're just missing like the beauty of CS if you can't appreciate all three players. So because someone says your guy's number 3, you have to say the other 2 suck. Like, I don't think CS is for you, mate. Like, I might think, like I said, like Nico's a dickhead as a buzzing. But I tell you what, if I didn't love what he did in the server, I don't think I'm a fan of CS at that point in time, mate. He's fucking sick. It's probably one of the most addictive players ever to watch. It's where also, just to be Thorin, even though that was a conversation about GOATs and about s1mple, I just kept ramming Nico in there every fucking third sentence. No one else even said his name. I'm just kidding. Sorry, Nico. I'll keep fighting your corner, mate. It's all good. It's all good. Right, anyway, Maui, what is your bad point?
Mine is just that it's, I mean, Aurora, I think Aurora's window is gone. I think Aurora's window is very gone. I feel like we might have touched on it, but now
mine was like them and Mongols, so you can make it more specific to Aurora, because I do think quite specifically they're in trouble, mate. Yeah.
I think Aurora are in a really bad position right now. I feel like if you want to point at a person, it's probably Woxic, who's kind of had the fallen off as an individual for them. But I feel like actually beyond that, and looking at not the numbers, but when I watch the games of them, man, I think Wycadia has just been inting really hard for them. I see if I need B-Tramps to come up with that Bozos death thing again, because the amount of rounds where I see Wycadia just do a wildly needless swing, sometimes into an op that he knows is holding him, or just a weird peak that I don't understand. Like
for people who don't know, the Bozo stat is when you have the numbers advantage and you give it away, basically, right?
Yes. Yeah. If you give up a death with a man advantage state, that leads to a round loss, and you're part of a round loss, because Wycadia on a couple of these maps against like Hotu today and versus Big yesterday, he's just making bad peaks. I saw him on multiple maps, mostly Inferno, where he's just like, he just swings into an op that he knows is there. Like Height takes a shot at him, and then with no potential for a trade, no flash, Wycadia will just swing back into an op on Dust 2 from a long range angle. And I'm just scratching my head when it's completely, there's no reason to do it. There's like a minute something on the clock left. There's multiple instances of this if you start watching the Aurora games a little closer, where Wycadia is just giving up his life. I think something's going on in the camp. Like, that's kind of where I'm coming with this one, where these are mistakes that don't even seem like they're, wow, that was just a poor play. It actually looks like there's a frustration that's happening. That's the in-game body language I'm reading from this team, where they almost are disrespecting their opponents. They're not playing it round by round. I don't know. I can't really give the exact reason, because I thought they had a break. Like, they had a long break. Sure. I thought they were supposed to come back to this and play better, but it almost feels like where they played their worst CS of the season against Complexity in the Bucharest quarterfinals, they've just carried that completely over to Astana here. So I'm really concerned about them. And the main thing about missing their window is that at the beginning of the season, they were playing great CS. They got into the grand finals of the Blast Bounty, and it was clear that they were on a bit of a honeymoon with Jota. Now, I'm not seeing the same signs of this team kind of picking it up. It feels like really anyone in the top 9 or 10 is going to be able to beat them. Losing to Big and Complexity and losing, like, some of the losses they've had recently are really strange. Like, they lost a map to Pain when they were playing with Demo, by the way. I mean, again, they lost to Complexity, they lost to Big. Some of these are just, to me, fairly unacceptable.
Didn't they lose to Tyloo as well? They lost to someone like that, or Saw or something. They lost to one of those shitty teams, right? Didn't they? At a PGL?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was like earlier in the season that would have happened, but I mean, they also lost to 3D Max, and it's like, I rate 3D Max pretty highly too, but I also think that the Aurora was in a position where they were pretty much on the cusp of being a top 4, top 3 team, and now they're losing to teams that are well outside the top 10. So that's me. I'm just raising the alarm bells for Aurora, who I think I already made on Hot Take Point made the take they're not going to even make the playoffs, and I think, but now this is the serious show where I'm like, okay, the warning signs are actually more emerged.
Yeah, that's entirely valid. And I think a part of it, I mean, specifically the Wicardia thing, is kind of like he got away with certain things for way too long. Then now they're finally starting to bite him in the arse a bit because the entire team morale's just not quite there. He's not clearly as sharp. And so when he goes for certain things, he just gets punished. Because I remember quite vividly, this was a couple of events back. He has a Dust 2 round where he's maybe second AWP, where he's got some sort of play set up for him. He whiffs, he dies. Okay, whatever. No harm, no foul. That was a set play. He just doesn't hit the shot. Next round, he's got a deagle, just swings short, headshot someone.
Oh, yeah.
Cracks the entire round open. All of a sudden, oh my God, the round's back on. They got energy. It's like those little miracle moments. No, miracle's a bit generous, but these little like highlight plays off the back of just raw mechanics that were able to really inspire and shift Aurora, previously Eternal Fire's like mood, bring them back into games where they looked a bit out of it. Those aren't quite landing as much, and that's just keeping them just under the cloud because it feels like mentally they don't recover without someone doing something incredible. They just can't seem to be able to like adjust the strategy, adjust the setup. That's not how they find the solutions. They're very much focusing on someone to just go, bang, that's the spark, now let's go. They're just struggling to get that back again. So I think Wicardia is part of that because he was one of those players who could hit those absolutely insane shots. And yeah, we're now seeing it more and more because one-off losing to Tyloo, which they did under the Eternal Fire banner, is whatever. Like Tyloo's a bit of an odd matchup, very skilled lineup. Aurora don't necessarily always outcall you. There's a chance for them to win that. But losing multiple times to 3D Max now, because it has been a couple of occasions now, they even got 2-0'd, I believe, on the last occasion, is really the final horseman. Is now, on the horizon. There's all four there. The time is now. They're pretty much done. Like they're not going to go and win. They're not going to have that dream run we thought they could have, given how they ended last year, started this year. There's still valuable pieces here. I think they'll still be a competent enough team to be like top 10. And look, playoffs at the major, I think they'll miss. But playoffs here, they're probably going to lose given how they've started. So, yeah, no, I think you're right. They are pretty much past their sort of at least championship window they could have theoretically had. Given how dominant some of the teams have been this year, we'd call it more of like a top 4 window that they would have realistically had. All of that seems to have crumbled and faded. And now it's a case of, well, we're probably back on that merry-go-round Eternal Fire we're on for a while, where it's like, how do we build another competent Counter-Strike team? Because they went through it for like 2 years before finally reaching this version. Now it feels like they're back on that carousel.
No, by the way, I got said, I hinted at it before that I felt like for both Mongols and Aurora, Eternal Fire, you had this amazing chance in the first season, basically, to actually be like, not only in the rankings, like number 4, number 5, you could actually have been in all the semis and you could have maybe, like, I actually even think, especially before all the teams like Maus got cooking and Falcons made the moves, you had a chance to maybe even like fuck around and win a tournament. Like that was plausible. Like obviously those PGLs especially were right there. Like on paper, Eternal Fire should have won every single one of those. Like they didn't even make a final. It was crazy. So to me, I do think I agree. The window's closed. Like you just have to say it right now. If you look at the rest of the squads, especially with like point 1 of this show, like, with all the other teams making these big gambles and then the top team stabilizing, like now you're going to have to actually get even better as Aurora just to be like 6th or 7th in the world. It's going to be actually hard just to get that ranking back again. And so no, the bummer is it's across the board as well. Like first of all, I know apparently people say he's got like an injury this year and he's had a bunch of issues. Xantares actually hasn't been as good, unfortunately this year as he was last year for me. I thought he was fucking if you go back to like this time last year, he was cooking, mate. Like that was where he had that insanely abusive, like, you know, like permanent 30% opening kill attempt rate. But then he'd have like 54% or something. You'd be like, what? Like mind melting, like donk-esque numbers, basically. So sadly, right at the time where his team gets better, actually his games had some issues, have been a bit more up and down. He's still very good. Then I definitely agree on the Woxic one. What people forget is at the beginning of this year, Woxic just like went 1.5 times up in level. Like he was actually like one of the better AWPers in the world. He was in the convo for like top 5 AWPer. He was having also Woxic's another player where you have to watch him play. The impact he has in a round is way bigger than his numbers. Like he is a guy who'll win you a mad clutch or take a super ballsy peek on someone and hit a no scope. Like he was adding a lot to their game, and I've seen games that he won, not just Xantares. It wasn't just the Xantares show. Sadly though, their calling's always been up and down for me, so I think that sadly they haven't done themselves any favours in that regard. And then and also here's the biggest bomber of all that they wasted this window, is that whole Anubis angle has just diminished as time's gone on, because no one used to like that map. No one used to play it. It used to always be 6th or 5th in everyone's map pool. So when it became your specialty after Vertigo went out, you were fucking actually for real the best team in the world on that map. And literally everyone except maybe like a Vitality or a Spirit, if like their stars went crazy, you could beat everyone on that map. But what did you do with it? You didn't parlay it into any fucking cops. And now sadly, a load of teams play Anubis now, mate. I mean, now so many people have now tried it that at this point in time, like, you're just not going to win those as an auto win. I always say if you want to have like a dominant period, having an auto win map is an enormous fucking advantage. That's gone now. Now they're just like still really good on it, but they're not like 10 levels above all the other squads. And then lastly, on the point about who they've lost to, the sad thing is they still have that ceiling where if you just put them in a random BO3 in a group stage, I still think they could beat almost anyone. I still think even on their day, they could even beat Vitality. The problem is, holy shit, is the floor of their own game bad, though. Like, I've never seen a team that had a ceiling that high. But, like you guys said, I looked it up. They did lose to Tyloo. They lost to Tyloo 0-2 at Pro League. They've lost to 3D Max. By the way, they barely, at this tournament now that we're doing this tournament, they barely beat that Hotu team of, like, fucking random CIS players. Like, that was, like, touch and go, that fucking series. Like, that's the worst thing as well. I can tell you as someone who's a better, I very rarely bet on Eternal Fire unless Aurora, unless they're the underdog. They're actually not a very reliable top team in that regard. It's actually kind of alarming to me, because there's another thing. If you think about the examples right there for us, think about when Mouse came online this year. The only team that could beat them was Vitality. Then when Falcons came online, the only team that can beat them is Vitality, and now they can beat Mouse. There's actually like a logic to those teams, which makes it really satisfying to watch their tournament runs. If you're Eternal Fire, Aurora, the best example is the last PGL, where you were playing Complexity for a chance to go to the semis, and you're not even in the semis, mate. What more do you want at that point in time? I'm making fun of ZywOo for losing into the bridge. That's comparable. They're like, the joke is for them that was the major final. For you, it should have been a fucking Tuesday or something. Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm with you. It's sad because I actually think people are going to think we're just hating on Eternal Fire or this is me against Turkish Fire. No, the stupid thing is, I actually would have enjoyed seeing Xantares play like a fucking grand final or fuck around and have like the one-off, one big trophy in his career where you win a PGL like the fucking Mouse players did and the Falcons players. That would be dope to see him in this position of people like Dexter and Spinks, etc., and win a trophy. It's going to be brutal if this is another person like the Furia guys that never wins a trophy in his career. That fucking sucks. Who wants that? No one. The answer's no one.
No.
Right, my bad point is going to be, it's actually just a very broad one that's not about a specific event, and it's one that I'm pretty sure this discussion's been had by many, but it's the perfect time to do it now. So I'll set it up this way. I'll just say at the top, the take is that the major final isn't a BO5. That's my bad. Now, the reason I'll set this up is this. In the past, if we go back a few years, like that infamous Cologne 2022, where it was the NAVI FaZe Epic 5 map, best of 5, it was back and forward and took 1 million hours, or there's the Pro League one where they got in Spinks to Vitality and they played Liquid and it went all 5 maps and ZywOo had the plus 50, etc. Right? When you used to have those old BO5s, I always understood, I did a whole video on it, I understood why people critiqued it. It took too many hours, it was too much of a strain on the players, if it goes all 5 maps and it's like, it can be a slog on some of the maps, like what if one of the maps is like 16-5 and then the other team wins 16-5, it's not the best CS. The problem is, I actually think, even though I'm not a fan of MR12 and CS2 has almost fixed all those issues, because if you actually look now, a BO3 can be way too short, which is what the major final is going to be, and a BO5 that's even a 3-0 can still be fairly snappy actually now. But if you ever get a match that goes, and we've just had 3 2 3-2 bangers from Vitality, obviously. Think about how much more those games showed us of Vitality. I think that actually increased Vitality's greatness so much more. They won those games, like especially obviously the G2 one, where they were like almost out the fucking tournament. So I think if you look at it, I'll give a quick analogy. The same thing actually happened many moons ago, 15 years ago now, in Quake. Quake used to have, in 1v1, it used to take 15 minutes for a duel. And the problem with the 15-minute duel was anything more than a BO3 could obviously last forever, right? Especially with overtimes and shit like that. What happened was in Quake Live, they made duels last 10 minutes, and so then they made best of 5 the format. And it was just way better because then you got to play like 3 maps at a minimum, you go back and forth, you have like the angle where it's like it's not that big a deal if you sort of like almost surrender on a map because you can go next, etc. Like, I actually think the big problem is this, is people haven't looked to it because at the moment Vitality just can't lose seemingly. But I'll tell you what can make them lose, a BO3 final at the major. If you put that, ask Cloud9.
Yeah.
BO3's just become so much more plausible that the underdog can win it, nick it, get like, and by the way, we're in MR12 now too. MR12 in BO3, like all you need to do is fuck up the pistol, get ecoed against once, or the margins are going to be so thin. So bearing in mind, I think one of the things a lot of people are really enjoying when they're having this big discussion about streaks and the era discussion is that like Vitality's having to do it. Every single tournament is a BO5 final at the moment, except the major, which just feels also so jarring. So even like, I know they don't play PGLs, even PGLs are BO5 finals, like everything we now use blasters. That's what I actually think it's one of the best things about the scene. I could have put that as my good, but sadly, when I look to the idea that like to have the era and to complete the narrative, you need them to win the major, we're actually putting all the marbles into a fucking BO3 if they even get to the final. So I actually just wish the final of the major was just BO5. So I think now is the obvious appropriate time to say it because I just think I don't think there's any negatives anymore to it. I don't think there's much on the hater side. I think a lot of that's been eroded by just the changes in the scene in the game. Thoughts, KingT?
Yeah, there's basically no excuse at any level, at any point in a tournament to be playing the wrong format. That's what MR12 has essentially solved for us. Back when it was MR15 and it was like, oh, what about scheduling constraints? That's why we have to play BO1 groups. And then in the grand final, it's so difficult to justify the BO5. And look, as someone who's watched quite a few, not that many, but quite a few BO5 finals that really dragged, that weren't that interesting, that got a bit long, wasn't playing the greatest CS. I understand the case against from both a spectator and player welfare point of view. Like the length of BO5 seems quite long. With MR12, we haven't really seen that problem manifest. And it just is a no-brainer to switch back over. And the best part about it is, though, on top of all that, is what you brought up about the BO5 essentially validating the streaks, validating the big event wins. Because you can't just say, oh, Vitality for this 5-event streak farmed easy trophies. No, they had to go and play the other best team of that event pretty much in 5 maps and prove it. And every time pretty much. Have they won? The first BO5 against Maus, they won 3-0. Everything else has been the full run all the way through. And it's been some of the most entertaining CS we've seen in a long time. It's really reinvigorated, I think, a lot of people's interest. And I think it's helped spark those debates we were complaining about earlier. Not just the fact they won the Grand Slam, but the fact that we got to see so much of them. And they're doing so many different things so greatly. We're seeing so many more opportunities for ZywOo to showcase his sort of style and the things he does really well. All of that has been immensely positive. So the fact that we are going to walk into a major, and we've already had this major pissed on by poor formatting, with the MRQs in Europe being BO1 to open out. Such a joke that we had that. And now the grand final of that major is going to be BO3. I mean, what the hell is everyone going to do for the rest of the time in Austin? Like, how good can that show much be, and how much beer can you drink? Just, there's not going to be a whole lot of Counter-Strike played, really. So it's going to be a rather probably going to be a bit of a letdown in that grand final. It's not guaranteed, I guess, but it feels like ahead of time it's going to fall flat relative to these absolutely intense and overwhelmingly fun to watch BO5s we've had. I mean, Vitality, the streak-defining team, was in OT. They were down. How much was it?
They were down 6-12 against G2, for example. Yeah, I think it was 12-6
against Falcons, right?
No, wasn't that G2. What am I talking about here? Yeah, I think it was the last one.
I'm thinking about the Nuke game and the Falcons one.
Oh, yeah, 12-6. Yeah.
12-6 on Nuke in Melbourne.
That was, yes.
Yes.
Like that is so thrilling. Not just because it's a comeback, but because we saw them go back and forth leading up to it.
Yes.
Across the entire map pool, pretty much. Like, we only missed 2 of the 7 maps. Yes, we're going to miss some of that drama in the major grand final. We're going to be opening that door for an upset that kind of kills a lot of the hype. But I think more importantly, we're just not going to get as good of a CS match, and one that really deserves to be the crowning moment of a major, which is, of course, the highlight of the season.
I'm really disappointed that Valve can't just change little aspects like this when there's been so much proof that there is a superior way to run things. First of all, Swiss BO3s at least. I feel like we're glossing over that fact. Obviously, the BO5 finish is where it all culminates, but I just still dislike that the major is the worst format. I'm also, I just looked at the timestamps actually for it. The BO5, and it's probably, I'm just going to assume it's the longest BO5 that we had in CS2 for Tier 1 lands. From the very first start, the start of the first round for the Vitality Falcons to the very last kill was 6 hours and 25 minutes and 30 seconds of broadcast time. So that's not, to me, that arduous of a watch. Like that's not too long when it's that good or that entertaining. If it were some bad, I don't know, you could make this bad. You could make it a BO7. The quality of CS would be lower because they would play their permabans. But I also want to just do that. And I think it's a shame that the major is just, it's gonna, if it upsets, if Vitality goes so flawless through all these BO5s and then they lose in a BO3 in the grand finals, especially to a team we don't really rate that highly going into it, like let's say it's a team that's not Spirit, Mouse, or Falcons, we're gonna just kind of be like, what the hell? Unless it's FaZe. If it's FaZe, then I think a lot of us are gonna enjoy it. But you know what I mean? Like if this is like Aurora or the Mongols, and for whatever reason it's the Mongols, but it's a 2-0 and Mazinho goes 40 and 18 with like 30 headshots, we're just gonna be like, what the fuck did we just watch? Like what the hell was that? It's not gonna leave us satisfied, even though the Mongols are a very likable team. Also want to hijack this briefly because you talked about the streaks to get into the streak discussion, because people, what was it? I think I quote tweeted Striker about it, about like people talking about Liquid Streak and how it had BO1s, and like it was kind of like a weird straw man about what makes a streak great, I felt like, and almost like, are you actually fighting for the point that Liquid's BO1s streak, or that their streak was harder because it had BO1s? Because I'm not really a fan of the discussion in general of what like a streak's hardness because it has a inferior format. Like I would want it to be BO3s, so Vitality proved itself. That's why their streak has so much greatness. Arguably, you could even make the argument today that their streak is greater than NIP's, not because of the level of teams that played at the time, but because NIP's included something like, I would love to know the number actually. I know it was 87-0, but it was a streak of like 50-0 because it included something like 25 BO1s. I don't know those exact numbers, but that doesn't make a streak greater to me. That just makes a streak. Having BO1s doesn't make it greater to me. It just makes it more random. Sure. So it's impressive in a different way. But if I'm talking about the greatness of teams, which is usually what a streak is helping you prove the value of, then I don't want there to be BO1s. I don't know. It's a tangent, but I just felt like this was a weird argument I kind of saw people sort of bandwagoning on Twitter. It's like, oh, but actually, if you play 50 BO1s in a row, it's actually harder, but it's like, that doesn't make it to me better. Also, by the way,
that's what's so weird to me is I get the NIP one, because you're right, in that era, every group stage was BO1s. It was normally round robin, right? So obviously you had a million BO1s. The Liquid one's whack because I didn't do this. HLTV did this. I don't know why. We all, only for Vitality, changed in CS2 for FaZe and Vitality to this thing where we count all the matches. It's not win streaks, it's map streaks, right? And match streaks, sorry, not map. It's not map, it's match. Yeah. So whereas what I was doing is Liquid has 22 series in a row though as well. So forget the BO1s, you can just do the series. They have 22 best of 3 and best of 5 series in a row that they won. You don't have to even have the BO1. So first of all, that's like a weird reason to discount it, because you changed the criteria and then judged the change criteria. There's already a great criteria just for series if you want that alone. And then secondly, I saw people had the gall all to go. Plus, that was when like the org was OP. CS2's completely broken for T-Side, you dickhead. That's the shittest map pool of all time. And we're going to ignore that as well, shall we? Like, you know, they actually had real maps like Overpass and the fucking pool back then. So already that's the thing. And then lastly, people say that thing, they go, yeah, but Thorin, you know Astralis was at most of those tournaments. Astralis isn't at any of Vitality's, you cretin. By that logic, all the other streaks suck. You know what? That makes Liquid streak better, because if you agree Astralis were the GOATs, at least they were at 2 of the tournaments they played. Do you know how many tournaments GOAT Astralis is at for Vitality? Fucking 0! It's the none! I actually don't even understand how that's a point. It's such a mental point, because it actually makes the opposite of the point you're trying to make. If your logic was, but if Astralis had gone, they'd have won. Yeah, and if they pop out of a time machine now and we give them 6 months, they might beat Vitality now. We just will never have to know, and Vitality doesn't have to face that fucking bullshit angle. So, yeah, anyway, put that all to one side. But anyway, I agree, because here's the real reason why. To take on your analogy there, by the way, of what would happen if, like, a fluke team beat... Here's the real nightmare fuel. That, like you're saying, you have, like... by the way, it's even better if, as you say, it's not Spirit of Mouse, the other good teams. Let's imagine it is the Mongols. So Mongols finally makes good. We'll make it even more whack. They get themselves a Vitality bracket. They get the bracket where they should have played Aurora, but then Aurora lost to, like, insert FaZe. Then, like, Mongols beats FaZe. Then Mongols just flukes a bullshit win in the final over Vitality. But the very next LAN, it's BO5s again, and Vitality just crushes everyone and wins the whole LAN without losing the series. That would be the worst narrative ever for the major, because the only conclusion would be, boy, does this major format suck. We wouldn't even be able to take anything from the fucking game. It would be so shit. It would be so whack. So no, to me, it's just a slam. Like I say, it's just a slam dunk. Like, surely of all times, now Valve doesn't have any excuse. Come on, we can just switch now. With all scenes playing BO5s anyway, let's just normalise the actual finals. And then, by the way, there's no complaints at that point in time. Like, BO5's enough. We can all accept the result. There's another thing as well. I always made that point, but it's one that people miss. Mate, who's ever complained about losing a BO5? Have you ever seen it? I've never even seen NAVI complain about losing that amazing Cologne one, which was like by the way, it was incredibly close. Like, every map was like fucking 16-5. Even they don't complain, because everyone knows if you really have 5 maps, you have to just tip your hat to the guy if he beats you then, mate. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas in a BO3, especially in MR12, the nightmare fuel is in this Mongols one. We'll just make it even more stupid. We're not even going to make it good. They'll just win like 13-6, 13-6, and Vitality just had an off game, or, you know, ZywOo had food poisoning or something. It would fucking make the game suck. Whereas one of the great things, like you're saying about those BO5 finals against Falcons and Mouse, is you actually have like time to recover and then come back. And mate, in fact, the resets Vitality did between maps was incredible in those series. Like, they would just remember, even when they lost the 2 maps, they came back and won again against Falcons. They were just going map for map, just back and forth. That's fucking sick. That's like a heavyweight boxing match, mate. It wasn't like that. Anyway, let's go to the ugly section. So, KingT, what is ugly at the moment?
So what for me is, I didn't know how to categorize it apart from ugly, but this is just Spirit Academy's point. Like, what's the point of Spirit Academy?
Because existential question. Okay.
Yeah, realistically, I mean, winning Bet Boom Landerlands, like, that's great. That's cool. And
it's a way that I already know that's the play.gg headline. They're like, KingT says, what's even the point in Spirit Academy? Then all the CIS people in the comments saying, how dare you? You are hating on us. Kill him now. Like, brilliant. Go on, keep going.
Yeah, because look, obviously, I mean, this all kind of spirals out from the Kyosuke stuff. But look, for me, your academy serves, the primary purpose should be to develop players for then in the future you to potentially...
You should get first dibs, surely. Exactly, yes.
Exactly. And I understand the appeal of developing players, then selling them for ridiculous fees, especially as sort of academy prospects prove themselves over and over again to be, you know, high-level talents. You can trust some of the numbers. You can trust what your eye test told you about them playing academy kids, tier 2 teams, even small lands like Bet Boom, Landerland. You can start to trust that, and you start to pay a bigger premium for them. So I get, in an esport environment where money's hard to come by, the appeal of selling off players. But man, Kyosuke is not just an academy player. Like, I'm going to be honest, I think aesthetically, when I watch him play, he might be the best aimer I've almost ever seen.
Oh, like, even better than Donk and Nico and all the rest.
It's absurd. Okay. Like, sure, Donk has lots of things that are very strong about him, and he does have this sort of like advantage with the way he manipulates his movement. Some of his positioning cues are a little stronger, and his pre-aims. But in terms of someone appears on screen, move the crosshair, put it on their head, and shoot, I think Kyosuke is stronger. That for me is what being the best aimer is your ability to move the crosshair onto someone's head and shoot.
Okay.
Not pre-aims. That's all these other details. Well, I call them in my videos like control aspects, like how much you control the game. But flicking to someone's head is the real explosive element that builds aiming and aimers and these star entry riflers. So in that sense, I think he is even stronger. And look, you can milk some fools for money by selling them Mokujins at a Kyosuke price once you promote Kyosuke and dominate everything. But instead, letting him leave, and especially letting him leave to a rival who's now basically just trying to smash everything, like they're going to get the coach they want. They're going to get the support players they want. You just gave them a player who could have been a star on your roster. I've watched Zontix and Magix play. I've also seen the roles Chopper takes up. You could have easily found another active use for Kyosuke. He didn't have to magically convert into a very passive lurker. He could have played short and Mirage. You know, he could have been that other outer player on Nuke on the T side. He could have done a whole number of different things in this team. But instead, they've got this weird fixation to the players they have and the roles they have them in. And they, for some reason, just don't want to promote this guy and use him. So that makes me wonder, the kids that are still on that team, who are clearly nowhere near as good, very talented in some cases. I think Alcaran's got a future. Mokujin has a future. The caller, Robo, clearly does call some tight game. Like, he's got something going to him. Even if I'm the coach of this roster, Sotfik, who's crafted an absolute monster in terms of how these teams play on land versus more experienced players. What is the point of having all them just sat there? They're not going to get promoted in the main team, clearly. You've just added a couple more teams. There's like 2 other rosters of academy players, at least you're in the process of adding them. Is it just for shits and giggles? Is it to make money? I really don't understand the point of all this, and it's frustrating me to no end.
Just really disappointing that Spirit are role selling themselves. I can't believe that they are just, because I've talked to Magix about it a little bit, and he says in jest stuff about Kyosuke and how Magix himself has to play some bad roles, and that it would be kind of, you can change how you want to play to enable people in different ways. You don't have to,
on that point, sorry, I don't want to interrupt too much, but like on that exact point, I watched a demo today from a game they played, the last event they actually attended. No, it was actually from this event. I'm watching Zontix get flashed through the mid smoke in Mirage to take T-side control. Like, Zontix is W keying through a smoke.
Okay.
I thought he was your passive lurker. We couldn't possibly replace him with someone as aggressive as Kyosuke. Like, you're proving the point in the games we're watching. Like, Mr. Body Shot is being sent out as an entry. Why couldn't Kyosuke be in this position?
Exactly. There's obviously points that there, and also the thing is this, like, in so many of the strategies that Spirit run nowadays, Donk isn't actually the first in entry on like a site exec. Yeah. So it's Magix that runs in sometimes Chopper. I mean, basically everybody has taken turns at it at this point, and but to say that Donk is always going to be the first man in. By the way, teams split. They split bomb sites. They don't have to, like, they only have a single entry point where it has to be this solo entry fragger breacher. Like the term, I mean, you know, I still think the term entry fragger is very good and valuable for explaining what the role is in there. But it's almost like Spirit in a way, despite the fact that they play in a fashion that shows there are multiple space takers and entry fraggers. Imagine that there is only one entry fragger and there is only one clutch player. Like, that has to be Shiro. Like, I don't know. They just it boggles my mind too, because we literally just saw an example of how G2 actually got more arguably out of Malbs by turning him into an anchor, but then on the T side, he would be one of the guys that runs in first. It's not that complicated. It's not that hard. And also I'm starting to just rate Holly a lot worse now this year. Like, I'm not gonna vote. If I were to do my top 3 vote, I don't think he makes my top 3 vote. Almost because of this. Like, I have to consider this narrative that he has some say on the roster, and them believing that roles are not going to be able to be solved or fixed with this is just bogus. It's just like, no, you if you get better pieces, you find way to acclimate and make the better pieces thrive together. It doesn't need to be just one guy does everything. I'm really flustered by it too. I wanted this to be my bad point. That's why we do the check before the show if everybody's points are aligned, because I was just really, really frustrated with the fact that Falcons is going to get another guy. And like, don't get me wrong, I like seeing Falcons kind of do almost what we would have done in our heads about like all the roster moves you could possibly do at any given time to upgrade a team and hopefully build up Nico and m0NESY, because I feel like they deserve it. But at the same time, this is such an obvious move for Spirit, who to me are withering, they're floundering. So just pull the trigger on it. And we're even seeing and you already brought up teams at the very beginning that are taking risks on moves where they're not getting the results they want, and they're not just saying, the roles would be a little bit different there. Like, no, they just go for it because they know that they need to change something about their team. And Spirit, reminder, all they've won so far this season is the Blast Bounty.
I will say it. Look, I understand that they did themselves, if you go back in time like a year and a half or whatever, pay millions of dollars. I suppose it was like about $1.5 million or something for Shiro, if you remember, from Cloud9. But if you add in like they won the major, a whole bunch of things, I'm sure they're doing okay. Like, here's the problem is I think part of the reason this move is going to happen, sadly, is mainly the Falcons part more than the Spirit side, which is if someone will, sight unseen, because I'm sorry, he hasn't played real tier 1 for me. He's played online tier 2 and like some land that doesn't really matter in tier 1. So the real issue is this is actually even worse than Donk. Because if you remember, Donk had at least played that Pet Boom land that had like the Virtus Pro players at and stuff like that at the end of 2023. Yeah. But the difference is, if someone says to me, because supposedly that was what was even said back then before we got to 2024, they did say you could actually buy Donk from Spirit. It would just cost like $3 million or something meant like that, right? No one's ever going to do that is the logic, right? Like, people might pay $700K for a player that's not that proven. They're not going to play for a completely unproven tier 1 player millions of dollars. And if that is what the fee is, the problem is if one person goes, actually, I will pay that, then that is the rare exception when maybe business-wise you have to do it because you don't actually know yet that he does become this generational talent, blah, 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 etc. So you might be able to scam him, basically. My problem with this is, with that taken to one side, because I can't know what their finances are and how important that is, if I judge it from the things I do know, the real thing that makes this such a bomber is, one, you do have what could be the best player in the world in Donk. And then two, you actually need a roster move anyway. That's the killer. It's that, I agree with you. If they were number 1 and the gamble here was, watch out, you might make like the other team number 1 as well. No, they're already ahead of you and you need a roster move and you're going to sell them an even better player. So, and I agree with you, KingT. If he comes from your academy system and he is actually for real tracking to be a generational talent in sports, I mean, I've made this point a million times, but I just think it's just proven itself to be true. You don't ever give away generational talents in sports. You try everything you can. It's only if it doesn't work at the end and you got 2 of them and you have to split them up or something. Unless it's like that, you don't trade away these players. Like, people will think, this is where, by the way, I get why Richard Lewis has the whole role cells thing. This is a role cell. Someone who thinks that Donk and Keisuke, if they are generational talents player, they can only play 1 of 5 roles in the game. And they have to be that one role. And if you put them in number 2, it's almost implied they're just shit at that point. Like, mate, if you're telling me Keisuke is going to be playing not his ideal role, well, then if he's really this talent, he's still going to be like a fucking 9 out of 10 player, though. So still better than having Zontix or Magix. Like, I don't even get the logic on that one. That's the weirdest part. Notice all they do is compare Keisuke to Donk, but they don't compare him to the player you're replacing, which is, wouldn't he be better than Magix? You know what I mean? Wouldn't he be better than Zontix? That's the weirdest part about this discussion. And the reason I think this is all set up is actually because of what I think is the most famous example of this, which is when they had m0NESY on NAVI Jr., they knew that, like, well, he can't join NAVI because they've got s1mple. That's because he is the one role that has one fucking player doing it, which is AWPer. We just don't do 2 primary AWPers in a team. So that's, like, in my opinion, IGL and AWPer are the only 2 people you can only have one of in a team. Like, so I get why NAVI didn't do it. And also, spoiler, they were number 1. So that was okay. Remember, that was the year where they were super dominant. Yeah. They won everything. Then they sold him to G2. That was fine. That was actually a shrewd move. That was okay. This one, there's so many rifle positions in the rifle core. You could try that. And that's also why it kills me, guys. Because if he is really going to be a cracked out generational talent, at least give it one season, then sell him. You know what I mean? Like, try it. Maybe it doesn't work. By the way, if he's still mega crack, people will still want him. People will still see he's really good and sign him. But you'd at least know if it ever worked for you. Because there's the thing you haven't thought about if you're Spirit. Is, bro, what if in 1 year from now, Kioske is actually some... I won't say he's donk, but let's say he's as good as Exertion. That's a pretty fair example. Let's say he's as good as Exertion in a year from now, but by him being on Falcons, they beat you every time. You're going to wish you never did that move. It wouldn't matter. Opening your bank app and seeing how much money's in the account will never make that feel better. And then lastly, on the point you said there, because everyone's going to lose their mind about the better aim point, I even think I know the best analogy you could ever give for this, Maui, because I think actually among people who actually know basketball, it's a pretty consensus take, but to a fan, it doesn't make sense. You know, when you say to a fan, if I actually had to choose a 3-point shooting form, I would choose Klay Thompson's, not Steph Curry's. Right? They short circuit instantly, Maui, and they go, no, but Steph, no. I agree, Steph Curry is better, but Klay Thompson, I actually think, has the best shooting form of any player I've ever seen in basketball ever. Like, essentially, he is literally how like an artist would draw ideal body. But so in that scenario, I could believe he's not saying Kioske is better than Donk, guys. He's just saying his aim just looks better, which I could believe, because I always thought actually the first thing that was weird about Donk is his aim is actually very kind of, it looks kind of very brute force and messy in a way. Listen, he's still hitting you in the head and still shooting you, but to me, it almost is more bot-like. Whereas I know what you mean. Like, to me, the reason I've always thought Nico was like the best aimer for me is because it's like art when he aims me. You know what I mean? Like the smoothness of the transition between the players and the way he fires the first bullet. Oh, it's like his aesthetics are unbelievable. It's not about whether someone can get more kills than him or not. Obviously, Donk does get more kills than him. So I think it's even a pretty shrewd point to make. I think, yeah, it's a good one.
I mean, that's just when the stats test is coming before the eye test for those kinds of people. They'll just look at number output, and that result equals greatness, not actually being able to perceive what greatness is.
But no, I'm with you. As far as I can tell, unless this guy just completely fails to make it, I think Spirit's going to look back in 1 year and look stupid, mate. They're going to look really silly.
I bet you right now they're giggling to themselves. So like, they're going to bring him for Magic. That's completely the wrong role, guys. They should have brought him in for XYZ player. Like, they're definitely in their minds thinking that. Like, this is where this all falls apart.
They're literally thinking, how will Nico and Kioske coexist on a team?
Oh, and by the way, Maui, I'll tell you what's actually a great player who actually makes your case about cultural impact for you is Magic's. Bro, between that major final and his cultural impact, that is all that is keeping Magic's alive right now as a Spirit player.
I know.
If I watched him in the game and he never said a word on the mic, mate, we'd all be hating on this motherfucker. We'd like, get him out the team. But I'll tell you what, he is so fun. We all love him. We're all like going out of our way to like awkwardly not mention that maybe he should be kicked out the squad.
That was plain black. He'd already been gone.
No, for me, it's usually like the joke with Rain on FaZe is like one great BO3 performance, another 3 years of Rain on FaZe. For me, it's another great interview for Magic's, another year on Spirit. It's just like he's cheeky. He actually brings personality to a team that desperately needs it. So at this point, actually, that is the angle for me. If I were to make the move, I would just say Kioske for Zontix. Kioske could be in Zontix's positions, or Chopper can just move some of his, actually. And I feel like people aren't really always acknowledging that. Like, Chopper plays some kind of rotator rifler spots, too. And yet, somehow, he can't just become an anchor. Like, what are we doing here? You know? That's wild to me.
Right, what is
I can take my ugly point now.
What's your ugly point?
Yeah. My ugly point is that the way I'm very specifically mentioning that this is tier 1 train. So like watching teams like Vitality, Falcons, and even Spirit to an extent play it. Tier 1 train, especially T sides to me, is pretty bland. And this is a problem mostly with watching Vitality in multiple grand finals where they are just running the same top A main split 9 out of the 10 gun rounds that they have because they get so many gun rounds because they win so much. It's pretty boring. It's kind of just lame that it seems like the map is already being boiled down by the best teams to just be a scrim on the outer yard every single round with a couple flashes and smokes, and they don't even necessarily heavily vary the smokes. Like, it's kind of some constellation of 3 smokes that they throw, and it's almost just like, do you throw the sandwich smoke this time? But it's always just that icon one, or some people call it camera, and then the right side bomb train Z1. But the reason I say specifically tier 1 is that seeing teams like NIP come into PGL Astana and run some more B-heavy plays. They try to work with Ivy a little bit more. I do think that there's room for teams to try a little bit more on this map, but I also do think that Ivy is just so toast on this. So that's kind of part of the ugly point here. I feel like Ivy is just such a low value position from the games that I'm watching. At the highest level, it almost feels like watching the tier 1 team specifically, Ivy is practically cosmetic as a position. It's almost just something that you have to barely flirt with to keep both sides honest, so you don't just get pushed and flanked from that spot. But in terms of actually breaching the A bomb site from Ivy, I find it to be pretty bad. For example, even today, NIP tried using it against Spirit, and in the most basic angle ever, Shiro just dodged a flash because it's so hard to get really great pop flashes through Ivy to blind people that are holding the other angle, because there's all these like nooks and crannies. Like you could be in the left, you could be like close left, you could be left behind one of the walls. You could be like, there's like 4 angles to the right that you can tuck in, all of which dodge different flashes. So I just feel like, I guess it's a general train point, but I am seeing a little bit more versatility or variety that is in some of the up and coming teams on the map. But I still feel like Train right now, it leaves a lot to be desired for how the best teams in the world play it.
Yeah, I mean, trust Snappy to come in and take a map and kind of change the approach and maybe make people think about different ways they can actually play on the T side. He's done it before, he'll do it again. But realistically, you're right. There are a couple resources missing to the T side that you feel like they just need to make the map interesting to watch, realistically. Like the amount of A plays we see, partially it was at the early days of Train, the reason there were so many A plays was just because it was so OP. And it was so difficult for CTs to hold on to the yard until we saw the sort of like very aggressive 4-man outside. We need to take a main meta, at which point the map sort of fell back into the sort of CT-sidedness. It's not anywhere near as heavy as it could have been in the past, but a more CT-sided sort of meta overall in terms of the balance. But that has been because Ivy is just useless. Like as a T side, I can't really do as much out of Ivy. I can't use it to pressure the other bomb sites. I struggle to get players out of it. I feel like every time a player has a highlight, it involves at least 2 free kills on players coming through Ivy, because they're just very awkward angles for an entry. So no, there is something really off about Train right now. And I feel like maybe blocking off some of the places the CTs can play, or creating some sort of opening somewhere that a good flashbang just magically can open that whole round, open that whole area up in a round, is critical, because it's not that great to watch. That's the problem right now. It's a map that has a lot of potential, and we saw in the past was one of the greatest. When top teams played Train back in the day, absolutely loved the map. As soon as you touched it yourself in matchmaking, you realized this requires way too much coordination and communication to ever play with randoms, especially randoms who don't speak the language. Like that just was impossible. But at the highest level, they made you believe, because they had so many great matches. We've yet to see that spark return in Train. It currently looks almost as bad in tier 1 play as it does in a really low-level, puggy sort of level. So I'm very frustrated watching it as well. That is correct. Something has to change about Train to give the T-side some options, and then we can talk about, well, a more macro meta point about CT sides needing an extra resource in terms of utility, but that's a problem we'll get to eventually. For now, we do need to make Train less shit. Quite simple.
By the way, I definitely agree on that last point. If in CSGO, you're totally right. You'd watch like a fucking insane like VP NAVI Train game. Yeah, this is the shit. Yeah. Then you'd boot up. And if you went to matchmaking, you would be just wishing death upon yourself and every teammate like 5 rounds in. Because what you realise
playing that CT out to yard.
You just can't do any of the things you're watching in the game, because one of the best things about the map back then was, because if you think about it, there's a million like sight lines on the map. And when people can attack, like they can essentially attack, every site has like 3 or 4 entrances. Like you can just get swarmed and coordinated on in a way that, like, if you don't all comm properly and play off each other, and outside you can always tell the teams who actually like I know he's covering my back so I can watch this angle safely, or I can watch the Ivy because he's going to guard me from the mid. If you don't have that, the map's unplayable. And unfortunately, this is why I actually think this is a really good way to contrast the difference between CSGO Train and CS2 Train. CSGO Train, in my opinion, was really good at the highest possible level. I always used to say to people, if you look at the layout of the map, it probably should have been CT-sided, but all the best CS teams could make it T-sided because they were so unbelievable tactically, util-wise, how they would like battle for the ladder room. If you think in CS2, the bomber here is, as you two have basically pointed out, the highest level games aren't very good. Like, you actually take the teams which, like Vitality, Spirit Mouse, Falcons, who if you drop them on almost any other map, it's going to be a great game. You drop them on this and it's kind of like a scuffed CSDM with like just a million 3v3s and 2v2s. And it's like, look, I'll give you this. It can be exciting, but it's not high-level CS. And in fact, when you watch it even the things that Vitality's doing to get their edge is just stuff like take a cheeky push-up on CT, some shit like that, or do a flank on someone. They're not doing anything genius on T-side that's winning the game. No one's making a playbook of anyone's T-side on this map right now. And I do think that's also a problem because I always thought the old version, this is actually sadly why I think it got removed, because it just became a map people couldn't play matchmaking. I always thought the actual utility usage in CSGO train was really good. It was like very layered how you bird it up. You would like fight for areas of the map outside as you go inside. And this one, it's like you throw your util and then you just go in on a timing. Like, I'm not a fan of that personally. So no, I'm with you. I have. Here's the thing. I'd still prefer it over Vertigo. I do think Vertigo never ever could sort of like find any substance at the bottom of it. But I do think this map needs to be tweaked. Something about the identity of it isn't there yet. It just isn't there yet.
Yeah, I think they just... I would want the angles smoothed out around Ivy, or Ivy to just give better sightlines. And I also would want the way you can defend Ivy in too many good ways for it to be valuable. I would probably, if I don't need to even touch pop. Like the whole pop area is a little bit weird for me right now, but I'll leave it just because I wouldn't want to change too many things at once. I would probably just lightly shrink the opening for T main so that it's not as valuable or as easy to just rush out a yard. And then I would also make it better for the T's to get Ivy by just smoothing some of the edges around. So the CTs can't just be in like 5 different cubbies that you have to hard clear for you to feel comfortable swinging into to flank A as a whole. So yeah, but I also wrote this point so that it's just the tier 1 teams, because it does seem like there's a little bit more variety for tier 2 teams. Like they are trying to mess with B a little bit more. Like Snappy, for example, was able to successfully pull off a pretty good flank against Virtus Pro yesterday, or well, the first day of the Asana event. In the last round of the half, he called for like what kind of looked like the average pop T main split, but then he went B with the guys that he sent out, and he himself even ran through his own Z smoke so that he could flank the people that are trying to rotate. So like he's adding some new dimensions to it and kind of playing on the expectations that people have right now, but it still didn't involve Ivy. So that to me is a flaw.
Yeah.
Okay, the last point of the show, my ugly point, is going to be largely referencing an interview Blade just did with HLTV.org. And also, I also saw Alexi B did something else elsewhere where essentially, this is what bums me out. I actually thought, I did an episode of Feed the Trolls where I addressed this. I thought Navi had sort of understood that the trouble they're in, but I actually get the sense they're in denial, guys. Like, if I look at Alexi B's comment where he basically just said something like, his headline was, I wouldn't say it's the last dance, but we need to make it happen now. It is literally the last dance right this second, Alexi B. Like, this roster, if it doesn't succeed now in this season, which is almost over, this is the last dance. Otherwise, you're going to be irrelevant. And then Blade's was worse, because Blade's headline was... this wasn't the headline on the article, but this is one that was quoted on Reddit. It said, I think the community is always overreacting on any topic, that's for sure. Then when I went in the article, I Control F, search for it. The question says, I wanted to also ask, this is HLTV guy, I wanted to also ask about the recent community, they put settlement, but they mean sentiment, it's just auto-corrected. You guys obviously showed a very high level last year, and this year you were only eliminated by Spirit, Eternal Fire, and the Mongols before Melbourne. Otherwise, you always beat the teams that you are supposed to beat. Do you feel like the community is maybe overreacting about your underperformance a bit? And then he says, I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just read this little bit. He says, I think the community is always overreacting on any topic. That's for sure. For them, any provocative topic can be a joy. But yeah, maybe you are right that we have, maybe 90% of the time, beaten the teams that we should, who are lower than us in the rankings. So first of all, both those sets of statements are only correct in that very specific framing. So the guy who's the interviewer, mate, you must just be Navi fan number 1. Because I noticed you didn't say the teams that have beaten you, you said eliminated. So you're now pretending only the elimination match counts. You know why they've done that, mate? I'll tell you why. Because you're right. If you say only eliminated, it goes Spirit, Eternal Fire, Mongols. That's fine. Those are all teams in a group stage that should be able to beat you, right? Here's the problem. You've also lost to Saw. You've lost to Falcons before they were into that point. Now, obviously, people think they're better, but this is when they're a brand new roster. You've lost to Team Liquid at Melbourne, by the way. I know you didn't mention that because that's not the elimination match. So my problem here is, first of all, you've lost to loads of teams. And this is actually very different tangibly from last year when you were in your streak of finals. Back then, it took the best teams in the world playing the best game of their life to beat you. It had to be Vitality going crazy. It had to be Nico and Modesty and Malbs better all be online. And then, it's even then going to be super close to maybe beat you. Now, you have bled losses this year so much. You're never making finals. You're never winning trophies, ever. And if the idea is, yeah, but we're beating most of the teams we should, bro, you were supposed to be number one. Not just win most of the games you should. And by the way, that number wouldn't be 90%, mate, unless you already do elimination. If you go back and look, that number's going to be more something like, I'm going to guess like 65 or 70% or something like. It's not going to be as great as you think. So I think this is what disturbs me is the sentiment of the denial. Like, they actually feel like, essentially, where they seem to be at, guys, is where I was at the beginning of the year of like, look, I get that you're going to give it a little bit more time, but you better get results soon or you're going to have to make a roster move, right? And also, lastly, I'll just throw this out there. Let's not get caught up in what name beat you in the server. The eye test doesn't check out for this Navi at all. Like, I'm not fucking blind. I did see you when you were in all those finals. That was some unbelievable Counter-Strike. Some of the best T-side CS I've seen in CS2. That's not what I'm seeing now. It's not just the raw numbers of the rating. Like, these players play way less impactful. And by the way, if I'm an opponent, I would be way less scared to play this Navi. So I put it as ugly. Because, bro, I was actually hoping they get that, like, essentially, unless you like win this major, you have to make a roster move, especially with like the first point we made on the show of all the other teams doing the roster move. So to me, this is actually quite alarming because it implies to me Navi actually think like that it's not even panic stations. They think it's just sort of like mildly going bad and people are overrating it. I don't get it because to me, I would spin it the other way for real if I was the interviewer and go, mate, what worse would happen? You're losing a fucking saw and stuff. Like, where do you think the flaw goes on this thing? You were literally, in the last year, you couldn't fail to make a final. It was crazy. So I want to see what you guys think. For me, it's just an ugly point.
Oh, it's... Firstly, yes, I do believe the interviewer is quite a Navi fan. And I think...
Which is fine.
Last year's award ceremony showed that there are a fair few Navi fans at this newspaper. Sorry, website. But look, this is a team that has shown us this year that without a fully perfectly working system where everyone gets their shots basically on a silver platter, they just don't have the players to contend. And last year was great for them because, look, everyone else who could be at the top had individual problems. They had glaring weaknesses that just held them back. And this year, as soon as everyone's finally fixed their problems, got on the same page in their own rosters, and start hitting heads, Navi fall off a cliff. They just can't seem to match anyone. And then, now the floor's been pulled out from beneath them. Yeah, you're right. Losing to Saw, indefensible. So I think for me, Navi are in a state where it's win something before the end of the season. Now, if JL pulls off another miracle major win, I'm not going to count it. I still think this is a case of you need to rebuild. But at that point, we start talking about what I brought up at the start, where teams shouldn't just linger with the dead stagnant roster. Take a risk, make something happen. And then to build off my other point about Spirit's Academy, you have your own academy. Is it not worth trying one of those players? Yeah. They don't cost a real buyout, do they? They're not some big, expensive investment. You can just try something. So there is, for me, Navi, the future is either calling NPL on loan, if the results off his loan or off his buyback or whatever it is exactly they've got arranged with Bates, or it's to try something with one of your academy kids. I mean, you've got Makaze, who seems pretty cracked. You've got Krabany, who's like leading and fragging on that team. Both could be brought up in different, with different visions in mind in terms of how Blade wants to see his roster playing, because he would have to make some adjustments, I think, to integrate either one. But there is a risk that needs to be taken with Navi if they want to return to contention against teams of the ilk of Vitality, the Falcons we're about to see, even right now, the Spirit, who constantly has their number. Even going back to last year, there are so many teams that just consistently beat them right now. Not even talking about the teams who come up and take their lunch money. They need to be able to contend with those top teams, so they just need to change something. Like, in terms of their approach to this roster, perhaps even Blade has to be a little less strict about how the team plays. play looser, play off the like Crabney's intuition if you're bringing him up. Just try something else. Because currently this is clearly not working. You don't have the fraggers to keep being to keep up with the scene. Yeah, at least one roster move required. We'll see who they choose to make it with. But I'm currently very out on NAVI. I don't have them in contention for the rest of the year until they change at least one player.
By the way, I'll give you one random detail as food for thought too that no one thinks about. Have you noticed how no one anymore in the scene even does the discussion of who they'd add? Because everyone feels like it's not an option. Everyone now started going the other way. Like, I've noticed a lot of people keep saying stuff like bitch should join Falcons and stuff, which like before you wouldn't even think that was possible. So it sure I think everyone feels like NAVI won't make a move, mate. Where are you at on this, Maui?
No.
Oh, go on.
No, but yeah, that's what I was saying. Just like that's all why I'm talking about players like MPL, playing like academy players. These are not expensive options, are they? They're a recall and a promotion. Like it's not a big financial investment, which is what we're kind of expecting to be the limiting factor for finding a player of quality for NAVI. Having to pay some big buyout or try and compete with the Falcons for a salary on a ridiculous player. They don't have to do that. Take a chance on a young player. That's all I'm asking for.
I always felt like Blade is, I find him to be emotionally unavailable, but pragmatic with what he can control. He says in the same interview just that they played with less quality than they should have played with, and that comes with hunger, because you should still be able to motivate yourself. But he's not really talking about how do you gain that hunger back or anything. I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he's the kind of guy that has the emotional answers for when things are going wrong. He has the
If anything, he needs to actually activate the Hunger Games, and then whoever's left gets to stay in the team. Not bad. There you go. Keep going.
Wouldn't be a bad way. Wouldn't be a bad way to do it. Yeah, we'll see. I feel like NAVI. I'm in a similar position as KingT is, that I would want them to at least make some sort of move. I didn't even hear about the NPL one before. That's actually a really good idea, because it slipped my mind that he was on loan to Bait. But as a fragging in-game leader, I mean, I'm not saying I think Alexi is a better caller, but NPL is enough of an upgrade as an individual that sometimes it can shore up the deficiencies in calling when he's getting 4 more kills a game, even if they're, just in kind of randomly spread out. So I like it. And you would expect that actually people like Emo would be good enough at this point to be able to secondary call, because he does secondary call all the time. He would be able to chime in. So that seems like a very, very reasonable option. I know people have been talking about Makaze too. I haven't watched him. I'm sure you have.
Prospects Makaze on the channel, of course.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Because I don't have much more to say regarding that, other than what I've already said about Blade and just his approach. How would Makaze fix this team, or would he, in your eyes?
For me, the Makaze move it's a restructuring of the way NAVI approach their T-side map control, because a lot of it is Alexi B is very involved, and it's not necessarily the heavy hitters who are going for the initial punch, and that's really what Makaze does best, is lead, like he's the point of the spear. But the reason actually I just wanted to touch on quickly that I'm talking about a player like MPL, I'm talking about Crabney in the academy, is not to bring him up and replace Alexi B. I actually think Imma is such a vocal piece, plays fairly starring roles. Why not get some players who are untested, who have shown a pretty strong level, but also have had a voice? That was the reason I put them forward for upgrades. I mean, obviously, switching over to MPL as your caller would also be an absolutely insane switch up of the philosophy, but would maybe allow you to bring in more raw, unproven players who have that sort of mechanical edge. So, Makaze coming into the roster it's just an injection of headshots. That's what he is. Like, he's really strong on that NAVI junior side, just banging for mid control, banging for map control across the other maps that don't have a mid necessarily. Like, that's what he does really well. And then NAVI Junior just pivot off the back of it quite often. Like, they're a punch counter punch team, and that counter punch is usually Crabney with another player, usually looking towards the other side of the map where there is, sometimes maybe a less important fight to be taken. They'll go and pounce on a gap there once their main brunt has sort of sucked in the attention of the defense. Like, that's kind of how they are set up to succeed, and it works so well. So I think there are a number of moves out there, including multiple upgrades from the academy team, or promotions rather. I won't call them upgrades ahead of time. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself on that one. But it's just a shit or get off the pot type of situation. Like, keep being sixth in the world or take a chance on these kids.